Millionaire Upgrade by Richard Parks Cordock. Read by Nigel Atchison. Introduction.
I'm Richard Parks Cordock, and I'm the author of Millionaire Upgrade. Before you hear the full audiobook, I'd like to read to you a short introduction. Like all good stories, the one you're about to read is inspired by actual events. Jason Murphy, a member of my own family, was indeed upgraded on a flight in Australia where he was due to start a new business venture. Amazingly, he found himself sitting in seat 1B next to Sir Richard Branson, who during the trip offered advice to this new entrepreneur. The characters in the book are inspired by real people. Before writing this book, I had interviewed 50 self-made millionaire entrepreneurs and many leading experts to create Millionaire MBA, an audio-based mentoring program for business owners and aspiring entrepreneurs. The wisdom and insights in Millionaire Upgrade are drawn from this program, and the fictional character of Michael represents the cumulative knowledge and experience of my interviews. Michael's character was also specifically inspired by Tom Hunter, one of the entrepreneurs interviewed for Millionaire MBA and one of Scotland's richest men. Tom started selling sports shoes from the back of his car after leaving school, and eventually he sold his business for over £280 million. He has since gone on to increase that wealth to over £500 million. In 2005, Tom was recognised by Her Majesty the Queen for his services to entrepreneurship and education and received a knighthood. Sir Tom's favourite all-time entrepreneur was Andrew Carnegie, at one time the world's richest man, and a great philanthropist who left a legacy with his personal wealth, establishing over 2,500 libraries throughout the English-speaking world. Sir Tom has continued in Andrew Carnegie's footsteps and is recognised as one of the UK's greatest philanthropists, having already pledged £100 million of his personal wealth to enterprise and educational initiatives. Andrew Carnegie also left another legacy. He recognised that the knowledge he gained in creating his own wealth was actually more important than the money itself, and he made certain that his wisdom would not be lost after he died. For that reason, he commissioned Napoleon Hill, a young journalist, to spend his lifetime analysing self-made millionaires and leaders of his time to uncover the common denominators which all successful people live by. Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, is considered the accumulation of his life's work and is known and respected the world over. It is Think and Grow Rich that inspired me to start investigating the common characteristics of modern self-made millionaire entrepreneurs, and it is no coincidence that the flight attendant who upgraded Tom in the book and gave him his magic ticket was called Andrew, in homage to Andrew Carnegie. The character of Tom is loosely based on me. This is partly because the book begins with Tom feeling just as I did and thousands of other frustrated employees in the same position. The book follows his journey from this point through to him unveiling his business idea. Having created Millionaire MBA from scratch and taken the program to market, I am also drawing from my own experience as an entrepreneur, having lived firsthand every message in this book. It's a commonly held belief that successful entrepreneurs have something that sets them apart, a magic gene or a special gift. What this book demonstrates, and I hope you will take away with you, is that there is an accessible, common and consistent mindset that all these individuals possess, the millionaire mindset. This mindset, as outlined in this audiobook and the associated program, can be learned, applied and shared. Pass it on and enjoy the journey.
Forward by Peter Ebdon, former world snooker champion. It's quite ironic, I believe, given the nature of this excellent audiobook, that I write this forward as I listen to the in-flight airline radio. The man I'm listening to is talking about the vision of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Crown Prince of Dubai. My family and I have just relocated to Dubai, and we're very much looking forward to the new challenges that life will present. I believe that in order to be successful in any undertaking in life, one must first have a vision. It's the starting point of all success, and so I was highly delighted to be contacted by Richard Parks Cordock, the author of Millionaire Upgrade, who had a great vision of how to bring this information to others, and who asked me to write this foreword. I know from personal experience how influential the right book can be to really help you make changes. Approximately 10 years ago, a book was recommended to me called Think and Grow Rich. What was the point of reading a book that had been written in the 1930s, I thought to myself. How wrong could I be? It was reading this book, which I know was also an inspiration to Richard, that helped me put into practice the principles for success and to realize a lifelong goal by becoming World Snooker Champion. After winning the World Snooker Championship in 2002, I was contacted by my former Latin tutor at Highbury Grove School in London. He asked me if I'd be willing to deliver a motivational speech to the students there. There were approximately 120 award winners in various subjects, and I presented each student with a copy of the book that had originally inspired me, in the hope that even if only one of them grasped the power and importance of the message and principles, then I would have helped to change that person's life forever. Without any shadow of a doubt, reading that original book dramatically changed my life, and Millionaire Upgrade could do the same for you. If you've already been successful in life or business, you'll recognize a lot of the success principles in Richard's book. If you're on your journey to becoming successful, let me assure you that everything that you need to know is in here. What do you really, really want from life? What do you want to be? What do you really want to achieve? Who do you want to be? Are you prepared to shape your life to ultimately achieve your goal? If you're not prepared to pay the price in advance, the price you must pay ultimately is not achieving your goal. Perhaps the most important starting point is to really love what you're doing. Then, in the words of motivational guru Brian Tracy, your work will become your play, and your play will become your work. You'll happily work very hard to become the best that you can possibly be, because you love what you're doing. It's your passion. Passion is the thing that separates successful entrepreneurs and winners in sport from others. Perhaps one of my own personal strengths is my persistence. I believed wholeheartedly and with absolute conviction that I'd be a world champion one day. It did take me 17 years, and I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but I know that every single one of those mistakes was absolutely vital in my ultimate success. We learn and grow from making mistakes, and that makes us much stronger. Many people lose heart and give up when success doesn't happen when they want it to. But that is the crucial time. That's the point when focus, determination, persistence, and belief needs to be at its strongest, because that's the period in which you will discover your alter ego. That's the person inside of you that is so committed to achieving your goal that you'll become like the strongest of laser beams, capable of blowing away any obstacle that stands in your way. Always focus on your goal, not the obstacle, and your dreams and goals will come true. When I needed things to come together for me and be at my strongest mentally in order to become world champion, I was. In psychology, there's a term called colouring. This is when desire, belief, and love come together to form that irresistible, all-powerful laser beam of concentration that enables you to achieve your goals. For me, in the final frame of my 1817 World Championship final victory over Stephen Hendry, the 7-times world champion and the most successful player in the history of the game, I focused all my attention, desire, belief, and love for my wife and children into a laser beam of concentration, to a level that I'd never been to before. Perhaps it was through necessity, but it was for me out of love. I knew just how much it would mean to my wife, family, and friends for me to become world champion, and this is what I focused on. That love, combined with an absolute belief in my ability to achieve my goal and a white-hot, all-consuming desire, took me to the top of my own personal mountain. And let me tell you that after all the hard work, disappointment, frustration, and at times disillusionment, the view from the top was absolutely magnificent. It's something that I'll treasure for the rest of my life. The financial rewards were highly significant, but far more importantly to me, I had achieved a lifelong goal of something that could not be bought. I'd paid the price in advance, believed in myself and in my abilities, and got what I delivered. I believe that everything in life happens for a reason. I believe in cause and effect. Nothing happens by chance. Perhaps one of the most difficult things in life is to keep on keeping on when success doesn't happen when we believe we deserve it. You'll only get out of life exactly what you put into it. It's a physical law from which there can be no deviation. I very much like the line from one of the songs on Elton John's album Peachtree Road, where he says, "We all get what we deliver." I believe that he's correct. My own personal formula for success is that preparation plus opportunity plus belief equals result. And the result cannot be any greater or worse than that which you deserve or deliver. During my 1716 World Championship semi-final win against Matthew Stevens, I visualized winning 1716 at 1416 behind so vividly that I felt that I'd already won. A wave of certainty flowed through me, and I held my nerve under the most extreme pressure to win an incredibly high-class match. It's very easy, however, to fall into the trap of becoming complacent or staying within your own personal comfort zone. I've been guilty of this over the past 2 seasons, despite knowing better. Knowing what to do is not enough. You must follow through and take massive action. You must grow and learn, because we don't just stand still, we go backwards, and then a greater amount of effort will be required to get your life back on track. Millionaire Upgrade has helped me to refocus, and I'd personally like to thank Richard most sincerely for putting me back on the right road. Despite your knowledge, you will fail if you fail to develop self-discipline. Brian Tracy sums this up perfectly when he says, "Do what you know you should do, when you should do it, whether you like it or not." In short, self-discipline is the price of success. Richard's audiobook will take you on an incredible journey of self-discovery, but ultimately your final destination will be entirely dependent upon you, your dedication, belief, desire, and persistence. In closing, I'd like to say that I hope that we meet someday, possibly at an airport, so that we can share stories of how this wonderful audiobook has made such a positive impact on our lives. Our final destinations may be different, but with the help of Millionaire Upgrade, we will always be on the same flight. Peter Ebdon, September 2005. Chapter 1. How come, when you know how important it is, you still get it wrong? Tom knew he'd set off too late for the airport. One more phone call, a last-minute panic to find his project notes, and a final cup of coffee with a perfect procrastinator's menu for what he now had on his plate. Frustrated and anxious, he was sitting on the express shuttle to the terminal, watching the seconds tick away and cursing himself yet again for not leaving the house earlier. Check-in was due to close an hour before departure, and things weren't looking good. He bounced nervously on the balls of his feet, his lean frame pressed against the tightly closed doors, almost willing the train to go faster. Finally! As they pulled in, Tom was the first out and running up the escalator and straight into the check-in area. While Tom was burning up every last ounce of energy sprinting to the desk, a man in his 50s, dressed in an expensive-looking dark linen suit with a crisp open-neck shirt, was quietly talking on his phone and making notes with an elegant silver fountain pen on that day's copy of the business pages. He politely declined a cup of coffee, with a smile and a wave of the hand, and stayed totally focused on his conversation. As Tom arrived at the check-in desk, his heart sank as he realized there was no one else queuing. Was he too late? He smiled hopefully at the blonde woman at check-in, while handing over his passport and ticket, and she gave them a quick glance. "I can check you in here, but you're too late for me to allocate you a seat. If you go straight to gate number 13, you'll be on standby, and they'll give you more information. Quick as you can, please, as the flight's closing." Tom momentarily worried about that number 13 as yet another bad sign on a less-than-perfect day so far, but grabbed his briefcase and set off at a run to the far end of the terminal for the departure gate. Hot and sweaty, but not too out of breath, he arrived to see a line of passengers already getting on the plane. Approaching the man at the desk, he explained the situation, expecting to board immediately. The attendant's name tag read Andrew, and he had a soft Scottish burr, as he explained to Tom that he'd have to wait until the last passenger had boarded before they could seat him. So he waited, with an increasing feeling of dread that actually there'd turn out to be no seat at all. Andrew kept glancing over and smiling reassuringly, and turned his attention to the man who had just strolled unhurriedly up to the gate. It was the man Tom had observed earlier at check-in. He really looked like a man who was used to the best things in life. Andrew greeted him respectfully, but with familiarity, and appeared to be asking him some questions. The man glanced round and looked at Tom with a warm smile, then turned back and nodded. As he went through to the plane, Andrew beckoned Tom over to hear the words he'd most feared. "I'm sorry, sir, but the flight is full, and all the tickets in economy are assigned." "I knew it," thought Tom. "This is not my day." As his face mirrored his disappointment and frustration, Andrew quickly spoke again. "Not to worry, sir. You're a frequent flyer with us. We can upgrade you, as there is a seat in business class. The gentleman who's just gone through normally books 2 seats, and he's agreed to let you have 1. That means we can upgrade you to seat 1B, the second best seat on the plane, and really a much better way to travel. Have a good flight." Smiling, he handed over the boarding card and removed the rope barrier for Tom to go through. Hardly able to believe his luck, Tom went on board, where he was ushered quickly to his seat, and he strapped himself in for imminent takeoff. He was rushed and agitated, but these days it wasn't a new feeling, and he nodded gratefully to the man who was now his travelling companion. He couldn't help noticing that he looked calm and relaxed, so Tom took a steadying breath as he turned to him. "I really appreciate you doing this for me. It would have been disastrous if I'd missed the flight. Thanks very much." He held his hand out, and they exchanged a quick, firm handshake. His companion smiled at him in a friendly fashion and replied, "No problem. Perhaps we should introduce ourselves, as we're going to be together for quite some time. My name's Michael Redford, and it's good to have some company." He looked inquiringly at Tom as 2 stewardesses passed them, checking that the overhead lockers were closed and that everyone was wearing their seat belts. "I'm Tom Macmillan. Lucky for me there was a spare seat, because, to be honest, I only got bumped up because I was too late to get into the regular seat I'd booked. So, thank you again." Michael was settling himself comfortably. "Hey, like I said, it's no problem. I always have 2 seats booked, in case my assistant travels with me, or just to have a bit more breathing space." He looked at Tom inquiringly. "Did you have a problem with transport? I hear there was a big traffic hold-up on the main road out of the city." "No, it wasn't the traffic. I just kept getting delayed when I was trying to leave. Too much to do, and I always seem to be in a rush these days." Michael nodded sympathetically. "In my younger days I was always rushing too, so I remember what it's like. And, as I said, I'm happy to help out." Michael settled himself back and adjusted his seatbelt, as Tom ran his hands over the leather upholstery and smiled in relief and delight at this unexpected comfort. The stewardesses were now demonstrating the safety procedures, and as Tom looked round, his neighbour unhurriedly uncapped his pen and took a leather-bound notebook out of his pocket. Tom slipped a book out of his pocket and reflected that at least he had the chance to read in comparative quiet. It was a business success book he'd picked up earlier, one of the many he'd looked at over the last few months. Some had been useful, but none had managed to help him see what to do about his current situation. He knew he wanted more from his life. He knew he wanted to make a real success of it. Before starting to read, he studied the back cover closely. Could it be, he thought, that this might be the book to give him clues as to how to get out of the potentially disastrous situation he was in? It had been brewing for the last 3 months, and was now definitely coming to the boil. He turned the book over, preparing to read, and Michael glanced over in an interested fashion as he caught sight of the title, Think and Grow Rich. That's an interesting choice of book. You don't see many young men reading that these days. Napoleon Hill can teach you a lot. He smiled at Tom. It'll give you some of the tools to make a real success of your life. I learnt a lot from reading that book at the very beginning of my career, and I see you want to know the secret too. Tom was intrigued. He hadn't heard of this particular book before he bought it, and he was surprised Michael had heard of the author. No one at his software company had ever mentioned reading about business success. In fact, reading anything other than project manuals was seen as weird. I picked it up yesterday, he said, but I thought it was new. His companion smiled. Well, actually, it's been around a very long time. Written in the 1930s, I believe. But it certainly helped me learn the principles that made all the difference to how my life developed. In fact, I believe it gave me some of the guiding principles that helped in my own business success. I hope it does the same for you. The plane was now taxiing down the runway, and as Tom glanced out of the window, he glimpsed the open page where Michael had begun making notes. It looked like calculations that had quite a lot of noughts on the end, and Tom wondered just how successful Michael was. That remark about the secret was certainly interesting, but would he be willing to actually tell Tom what it was? Really, Tom thought, all I need are a few clues on how to move forward. As he hesitated, the unfastened seatbelt's light went on, and as he unbuckled, he wondered how to approach the subject. Michael helped him out by leaning forward and asking, "So, what kind of business are you in, Tom?" This was a question Tom had recently been asking himself fairly frequently, and he'd even started to wonder if in fact he really was in the right business. He debated just how much to tell Michael, and was on the point of giving a short, snappy answer, when he suddenly thought, "What have I got to lose? I might as well get another perspective on it. This guy's obviously successful, so he might be able to give me some good advice." "I'm an IT project manager. Well, I am at the moment, but this trip may be the last for the company, as there's a lot of change going on right now, and there's some talk of downsizing and redundancy. It may not affect me directly, but if I'd missed this flight, it wouldn't have looked good for me. I'm not looking forward to the job I've been given to do on this trip, but it wouldn't be any easier if I'd missed the flight and delayed it. I'd rather just get it over with." "Business is often about doing things you'd rather not do," said Michael. "I believe that if I'm not working on something I'm passionate about or believe in, then it can seem like an uphill struggle. What's the unpleasant task, if you don't mind my asking?" Tom realized that he was only too happy to talk about it, particularly to a stranger who wasn't involved. "No, I don't mind. In fact, it's good to be able to talk about it. I'm going to close down our regional office and get everything transferred back to base. It's been running down for a while now, but it's not the work so much as the people. Some of them may not get other jobs, and things aren't looking good for the company at home either. At the moment it feels like I'm chasing my tail the whole time." "Sounds frustrating," remarked Michael sympathetically, and encouraging him to go on. Tom nodded in agreement. "That's my constant state these days. The problem is I work in software development, and it changes so fast it's hard to keep up. It's like being on a treadmill. Just when you think you're getting somewhere, another new product comes in, and you have to start all over again. I'm really struggling to stay on top of it, and to be honest, things are just not going that well. The rumors of redundancy or redeployment within the company make it all the more uncertain and hard to keep focused on what you're doing. It's difficult to feel you're making a success of something when you're mostly just running to keep up. I've been reading a lot of business success books recently, but just how to change things seems to be eluding me." He sighed quietly. "I wish I knew what to do about it." Suddenly embarrassed by his confidence to a stranger, Tom hurriedly tried to change the subject. But Michael didn't react the way he would have expected. He just shrugged and said, "You know, that's often how it is in life. Success and failure are two sides of the same coin, and I believe it can be flipped over whenever you choose." Tom wondered if Michael had actually heard what he'd said. The possibility of being made redundant or his job downgraded certainly didn't give him the feeling that he had control over his current situation. Deciding whether he was going to be a success or a failure, well, that certainly wasn't how it appeared to him. It was the company who had all the options from what he could see. So he decided to challenge Michael about it. "Surely success is a matter of luck to some degree. You can't just turn it around. It isn't always within your control. Circumstances can prevent you," he said, facing Michael with a questioning look on his face. "On the contrary, Tom, I believe that success is based on 8 sound principles, or insights if you like, that once learned and applied can do just that. I believe it is always in your control. Whether you choose to exercise it, of course, is up to you." Michael smiled at Tom's obvious skepticism. "You don't believe me, do you? Well, tell me a bit more about your problem at work, and I'll see if I can help." Tom felt suddenly optimistic, but quickly pushed it aside. He'd spent too many months worrying about his situation to believe that there could be an easy answer just like that. However, this was a great opportunity, and he must have been put in this seat for a reason, so why not take advantage of it? He indicated to the pen and notebook and said, "It looks as if you're planning on doing some work, so I don't want to interrupt you. But, yeah, I'd really like to get another opinion." Michael nodded and put the notebook and pen down. "Okay, what's the real problem?" Tom was taken aback. "Well," Michael said, "in my experience, the actual thing you think is the problem is usually just a sign of something deeper that's wrong, so I like to get to that first. It saves time." Tom laughed at that and thought for a moment. "Well, I've wondered if it's my job. I'm a project manager in an IT company, as I said, but I don't really like going in anymore. I dread the constant repetition of the stuff I do, and each day's the same, chasing deadlines and never having a moment to breathe. But if it's not my job—" His voice tailed off, and he tried to think about what Michael had said. "The real problem, I think, is that I feel stuck and bored. I'm frustrated, and although I want something better, different, I don't know where to start." He gestured towards the book in his lap. "I told you I've been reading books like this for a while now, and although I know there's a better future out there, I just don't know how to get there." Michael nodded in agreement. "Well, the good news is that you're absolutely right. There is a better future, and there are clues to help you find it. Let's see if I can help you identify what those clues are. Take myself, for example. What do you see when you look at me?" Tom wasn't sure what reply Michael was hoping for, but he looked at him and debated for a moment or two about the impression Michael had made on him. "Well, I see a man who's obviously very successful in business, used to the good life and all its benefits, like travelling in the best seat in the plane, probably privately educated, then university, probably a serious business background, and someone who likes beautiful things." He indicated the pen. "I don't know much about it, but that looks like a valuable antique to me." "You're right about the pen," said Michael, as he ran his finger over the silver scrollwork on the body. "I bought that when I made my first million, and it combines form and function with beauty, and that's what's important to me. But as for the rest, if I was to give myself a label, I'm an entrepreneur, and I certainly wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. In fact, my family sold things from a stall at an open-air market, and I left school at 16 with no qualifications at all. You see, Tom, I believe it's a person's experience and what they do with it that matters, not where they come from or how educated they are." Michael saw Tom was looking quite surprised. "It's not what you expected, is it?" Tom shook his head and then smiled. "You're right. I didn't think you were an entrepreneur. Maybe a CEO of a major corporation or something similar, but not that. You know, I've often thought about running my own business, but I lose heart because it always seems like the people doing it possess something above and beyond the rest of us. They had to have special qualities, things I don't think I have. Michael looked at him. You're right, they do have special qualities, but they're the same ones that everyone else has. You already have all of them. It's whether you choose to use them and how you do it that makes the difference between having an entrepreneur or an employee mindset. Tom noticed he was looking at him seriously, as if weighing him up. Tom, let me ask you a question. Which mindset do you think you have? That of a millionaire or an employee? Tom was startled and wondered how on earth to reply. I'm not really familiar with the concept. Can you expand on that a bit? Sure, Michael said. Okay, I believe we're all born potential millionaires. It's our genetic destiny to achieve because we are a race of positive creators. You know, everything we see has been created in our minds first, and if you think about it, to be an entrepreneur means that you have to create something out of nothing. Everyone has the ability. But the problem is that most people are only using a tiny fraction of their potential. Most people are stuck in the mindset they've inherited from their parents, and that's the first thing that has to change. They usually teach us to get a good education and qualifications, so we can get a good job where we'll be promoted and build a solid pension. Certainly that's safe, but very few people I know have ever achieved financial freedom in that way. But hang on a minute, said Tom. Are you saying those are bad things? Not good or bad, but what I just described is the employee mindset, where you work for someone else and they dictate how, when, and where you work. How many people in regular jobs are there who get to be a millionaire just from their salary? Well, apart from a handful of high-flying financial city types, not many. Michael went on. The millionaire mindset is a 180-degree shift from the employee mindset, so that you're following your passion, not your pension. You get so obsessed with your business idea that you just can't stop thinking about it. You're so excited by it. Do you understand the difference? Whilst Tom understood it, he was still not sure how it could be applied to him. How do I switch from one to the other? Well, Tom, you work in IT, so this should be really simple for you. I said you need to change your mindset, and the mind is just a computer. So all you need to do is reprogram it with some new software. Grateful to Michael for using an analogy he could relate to, Tom started to relax. Oh, I can do that all right. He was now alert and interested, and stood up to get his briefcase out of the overhead locker. Michael glanced questioningly up at him, and looking down over his shoulder, Tom explained, I have the feeling that things you're saying could be really important to me. If you don't mind, I'd like to write them down so I don't forget them. Smiling, Michael tore out the page from his notebook with his calculations on, and handed the notebook over to Tom. Here, use mine. I always carry a notebook because, as you just found out, you never know when you need to write down something that's inspired or interested you, or a great idea strikes you. Tom held the slim notebook in his hand, and then pulled a pen from his jacket pocket, and started to write down the key things that Michael had told him so far. Okay, I understand the difference between millionaire and employee mindset, but there must be more to it than that. Nodding, Michael watched Tom's notes appearing on the page. Of course, and you also need to know much more about the 8 clear principles or elements. Anyone can apply them, but most people don't do it for a variety of reasons, or they only apply a couple. He waited until Tom had written down 8 principles, and then he went on. Do you remember as a child ever seeing at the circus someone spinning plates on sticks, starting with 1 or 2 and ending up with 6 or 8, all going at the same time? He didn't immediately see the relevance of a circus act in their conversation, but Tom was realizing that Michael never said anything without a good reason, so he nodded in agreement. You saw those plates in the air, and they were all spinning at once. The juggler had to pay attention to every single plate, not just the ones nearest to him. If he let his focus slip or didn't pay them equal attention, then what happened? They fell crashing round his ears. Tom jotted down another note, and then heard the slight rattling sound of a drinks trolley approaching them. One of the stewardesses he had seen earlier approached them and offered Tom a glass of champagne. Michael was clearly well known to her, and she handed him a beer without being asked. "Never been much of a champagne man," smiled Michael. He then greeted the stewardess with easy familiarity, asked how she was doing, and inquired about how her husband was coping with early retirement. Tom realized that Michael was indeed a very frequent traveller, and well known to the airline staff. The stewardess smiled back, delighted at him remembering their last conversation, and said everything was fine. Her husband was finally doing all the things he'd really wanted to do, and that she was looking forward to early retirement too, so she could join him. This was obviously a familiar joke between them, and Michael teased her as she prepared to move down the cabin. "Olivia, you know you can't retire until I do, and that's not for quite a few years yet." Tom raised his glass to his nose and sniffed appreciatively at the flowery bouquet. He made a toast to Michael as he drank. "Well, here's to the champagne lifestyle. You don't get this in economy. If this is what being a successful entrepreneur's like, then I'm all in favour of it." Michael laughed and said, "So that's why you're reading Think and Grow Rich." "I admit the title might make you think it's all about money, but if you think fine wines and luxury are what primarily motivates entrepreneurs, then you're wrong. Of course, only a fool would say that money isn't important, but it's not as important as why you want to run your own business and the passion that drives you to do it." Tom objected. "Come on, surely the money is why everyone does it." Michael shook his head. "No, it's why people think they want to do it, but without all the other principles coming into play, you'll never be successful over the long term if all you're focusing on is the money. Remember the juggler. It's never about just one plate." Tom was really intrigued now. "The money would certainly help me. I'm in danger of losing my job, and Julie, my fiancée, and I are planning on marrying next year." Michael nodded. "Of course it would help, but what I'm really saying is that if you find out what drives you, then you have a chance to be successful beyond what you can imagine." He thought for a moment and then continued. "Let me ask you a question. Why do you work in IT rather than in any other profession?" "I guess I just drifted into it," replied Tom. "I'd never say I was passionate about it, but I was generally interested, and, more importantly, I needed some income after university. It had a great salary, and when I was offered the job, I had a huge student debt and credit card bills. So I suppose you could say that in many ways I did it for the money." "Okay, I'll give you that. And is it still a good salary?" asked Michael. "Yes, it is," Tom agreed. "Then if it was just about the money for you, why are you not satisfied now?" remarked Michael. "I believe that it's because, deep down, success as an entrepreneur is never about the money. It's about freedom, choice, proving yourself, doing things your own way, creating what you need to create." Tom was really struck by the sincerity and depth of passion in Michael's voice. This was something that he absolutely believed in, and he started jotting down the key words as Michael continued. "When an entrepreneur starts a business, they usually need to do it because the pain they feel of not doing it is so great, or the pain of carrying on for the rest of their lives as an employee is so great, that they have no real alternative. Of course, it's also true that money plays a part in it. When you have no money and the prospect of having some is great, then the need for money is a good driver. But I meet very few successful entrepreneurs who just do it for the money." Tom was looking thoughtful, so Michael pressed on. "You, on the other hand, are working just to pay the bills. I believe that that's why you're unhappy at work and looking for answers in books like Think and Grow Rich." Tom wasn't sure why, but he really didn't like hearing himself described as someone who was working just to pay the bills. That sounded like everyone else he knew, and made him seem too predictable, accepting his life just as it was. He didn't think of himself as predictable, but when Michael talked, he could see his life stretching out before him, dull, flat, and inevitable. He was suddenly reminded of his father and how he had quietly soldiered on for years in a job he neither liked nor disliked. If he'd had dreams, Tom didn't know what they were, and he suddenly felt trapped and irritated at himself for feeling like that. Michael saw his discomfort and waited for Tom to get his thoughts together. Tom put his champagne glass down and thought about what he wanted to ask Michael. Lots of questions were running through his head, and he knew that his being in this seat on this plane was the most incredibly lucky break, and that he had to seize it. He knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and thanked his lucky stars that he'd got this seat. In fact, he felt like he was going through his own personal masterclass with someone who was obviously a very successful, self-made millionaire. However, his old habit of self-doubt made him cautious. Although he wasn't sure Michael really would let him in on all his secrets, if he wasn't going to go for it now, he might never get another chance. Okay, if it isn't the money, then what is it? I warn you, I have lots of other questions too. Satisfied, Michael leaned back and thought for a moment. I'm delighted you have lots of questions, because I believe that it's from the mind that it all starts. He looked over at Tom. Tell me, what are you really passionate about? Tom looked surprised. He had his pen poised to make notes on how to be successful. He wasn't prepared for a question about something so vague. I guess, well, I don't know, really, he said slowly, as he realized that actually he had never allowed himself to think about that. Not your job, then? Asked Michael with a twinkle in his eye. Not at all, replied Tom. To be honest, when I think about my job, I see this treadmill with endless deadlines stretching ahead of me, and whenever you reach them, you have to start all over again doing the same thing. I know what the company wants is a very fast turnaround that will keep the customers happy with the minimum of input, but that doesn't satisfy me. The clients are unhappy because they aren't getting my undivided attention, and I don't master the new software completely before the next one is launched, and I have to start all over again with a new one. No, I certainly don't feel passionate about my work. Frustrated and fed up is more like it. Michael looked at him speculatively. Do you know why I got started in business? As Tom looked ready to respond, he continued on. It was because, as a young boy, I was obsessed with running. That was my passion. I was a sprinter, but in those days good training shoes were few and far between. My uncle had a market stall selling boots and slippers, and he got a few pairs of trainers in for me to try. They were okay, but I always wanted something better, faster, lighter, so I started trying to find suppliers so my uncle could stock them on the stall, but he wasn't really interested. So I started selling them myself, first to my school friends, and then I got my own market stall. From my passion for running, I ended up owning first one sports shop, then a chain, which I sold for over 100 million. In fact, you could say my business came out of the problem I had in not being able to satisfy my passion for great running shoes. Tom had been listening, fascinated. This successful-looking, clean-cut man certainly didn't look as if he'd ever seen a market stall, let alone run one. He thought for a moment, then said, I wish I could say I had a passion like that. I've often thought I'd like to run a business, but really I have no idea where to start. Over the last year, I've read lots of books, listened to motivational business programs, and really made a study of success. I've loved doing that, but I still have no idea where my passion would lie. Michael was struck by the intensity in Tom's voice. He obviously was sincere, and so much wanted to have some answers to his problems that Michael knew he had to try and help him. Think back a few years. Were there no interests or hobbies that you were completely absorbed by, almost addicted to? Tom closed his eyes for a few seconds, as if looking at an internal screen where he was reviewing his life. Slowly he nodded, and had a reminiscent smile on his face. Yes, actually, you're right. I was a very good junior tennis player, and I kept that up until I went to university. Unfortunately, once I started all that academic work, to say nothing of the social life, I just let it drop because there didn't seem enough time. So that was something I was passionate about once. I loved playing tennis. I felt totally alive. I never even minded the training. Michael had been watching Tom's face and seen the light in it, and how his voice had changed to sounding full of energy and conviction. He thought he'd try and go a bit deeper. What do you think made you a good tennis player then, Tom? Oh, I suppose I was passionate about it, to use your word. When I was playing, I thought about nothing else, and when I stepped on that court, I believed that I was unbeatable. I was obsessed. I wanted to win so badly, and everything just seemed to fall into place when I was playing. Michael grinned at him. You have just described some of the key characteristics of successful entrepreneurs: passion, desire, and self-belief. No business can succeed unless you are really passionately obsessed and have a burning desire to succeed. You must love the challenge, and you can only do that when you're operating from your passion. It's where you connect your heart and your mind together. Like when you're in love. Remember when you first met your fiancée? Julie, wasn't it? You had to move right out of your comfort zone to ask her out, and you did it. We do amazing things for love. Take risks, conquer our fears and our limiting beliefs, all because of love. It can truly create magic in our lives, and that's why it's the first step, to find that passion for an idea, a service, or a business. Did you win any trophies for your tennis? Tom wondered if Michael was signalling that he wanted to turn the conversation into more general areas, but here at least was something he could boast about. Oh, quite a few. I used to take them home, and my parents would put them on a shelf and proudly point them out to visitors. Were they valuable trophies? Michael asked. Startled, Tom laughed. Not at all. They weren't expensive silver or anything like that. Probably worth very little, but I never even thought about it. So, Michael persisted, if they weren't worth much, you weren't playing for material gains, were you? So what were you playing for? Tom thought about it. For the pleasure of winning and competing. Every match was a challenge that I had to overcome. I never thought about anything else. Exactly, said Michael. Still think being successful is all about money? Tom held his hands up in front of him in mock surrender. Okay, it's true that the winning wasn't about money, but I'm still not convinced that it isn't a major factor for most people. I know that making $1 million would have a major impact on my life and circumstances right now. Michael could see that Tom was resistant to the idea that passion was more important than money, and he realized he had to get Tom to think a bit more deeply. Okay, so you're not sure it's the money. Well, I know a lot of very successful entrepreneurs, all millionaires, and some of them even billionaires. All of them have more than enough money to retire and live in luxury for the rest of their lives, and yet they don't do it. They aren't sitting on a beach contemplating the ocean. They're out there starting new businesses. So if it isn't the money that's driving them, what do you think it is? How about greed? Tom flashed back, then laughed as he watched Michael's eyebrows go up, but he continued on. Well, if they're going on making millions, then there must be a good reason for it, and greed is a reason for some people. Most of us would just think about going off around the world, living on a golf course and playing 18 holes every day. So when I read stories in the business news about millionaires who don't retire, I do wonder why. Are you telling me that it's just passion that keeps them going? Yes, I am. And I'm also telling you that to be successful, you have to stop thinking like most of us, to use your phrase, said Michael. We just talked about love a few minutes ago. Successful entrepreneurs are so in love with their business that they can't think of anything more interesting and vital to be doing than working on that business. Even when they're sitting on that beach and looking at the ocean, they're still thinking about their business, because when you're passionate and motivated to do something, then you're literally white-hot with desire to make something happen. Michael grinned. Whether that's getting the girl of your dreams or starting your own company, the passion is the same. Tom was really enjoying himself now. This conversation was more fun than he'd experienced in a while, and he had the feeling that it was really taking him somewhere he wanted to go. "Right, Michael, I surrender. It's about passion. But now I don't play tennis anymore, so where does that leave me?" Michael smiled. "You just have to find the thing that can raise your energy and get you fired up in exactly the same way. It can be an idea, a product, a service, or anything that makes you feel alive and confident that nothing else matters as much as that does. Find that, and I believe you'll start thinking like a successful entrepreneur, maybe even like a self-made millionaire." Tom looked up from writing in his notebook as something Michael said struck him. "I just realized that you say 'I believe' quite a lot. Is that deliberate?" "Yes," said Michael, "I do. Because, as I told you, self-belief is critical to success. Saying 'I believe' is a little device of mine to remind me of what I need to do to stay successful." Tom looked skeptical. "But just saying 'I believe' won't bring that kind of success." Michael laughed heartily as he shook his head. "No, of course not. Just saying something doesn't change anything. Acting on it is what makes the difference. For me, 'I believe' represents the principles of success that I've seen over and over again. Each letter of 'I believe' gives me clues to the qualities that I'm looking for in myself and in any project I'm going to take on. We've already discussed the 'I' and the 'be', for instance." Tom looked puzzled. "We have?" Michael nodded. "Certainly we have. You, for instance, probably didn't register the 'I' because you're still thinking like an employee. The 'I' stands for 'I believe in myself.' It's all about self-belief, and it has to be total. You must have an almost unnerving belief in your ability to reach your goals." Tom wasn't sure about that. "Sounds like arrogance to me," he said. "No, it's very different, believe me," said Michael. "You cannot pursue your goals if you don't believe in them 100%. It's not thinking that you are great, but that your idea is unbeatable, and that you'll do anything to make your customers believe in your product or service as much as you do. That's where the 'be' of believe comes in. This stands for 'be passionate and want it.' You have to be totally in love with your idea and have a burning desire to make it happen. Just remember, when you're passionate about something, you'll do it, whatever happens. It's your overwhelming desire that'll give you the determination, drive, and ultimately the commitment that you need to realize your business idea. It's all about belief. Absolutely, with no doubts. Believe in what you are doing, be totally passionate about your business idea, and be sure that it's something you would do even if you weren't getting paid for it. Not getting any trophies, for instance." Tom laughed and looked up eagerly. "Right, if that's 'I' and 'be', what's next?" "Obviously it's the rest of the letters from 'I believe.' But first, have a think over what I've just said. Do some soul-searching to find out what it is that you're passionate about and what you believe in, and we'll get on to the rest later." Michael stood up, stretched, and strolled his way up the aisle. Although Tom was hoping for the secret of his success there and then, he smiled to himself as he realized that Michael wanted him to do some of the work too, and carried on writing in his notebook. Tom's notes. I believe in myself. There is a millionaire mindset and an employee mindset. It is your choice which one you have. There are 8 principles of success. You need to make sure you practice all of them, all of the time. You must develop unnerving belief in yourself as an entrepreneur. This is not arrogance, but self-belief. You can develop self-belief and confidence by stepping outside of your comfort zone. Self-doubt is the death of an entrepreneur. Be passionate and want it. Passion and love for your idea is the starting point as an entrepreneur. You must connect your heart and your head together around your winning business idea. You must have a motive for becoming a successful entrepreneur. Money is not a strong enough motivator. Pursuit of passion or avoidance of pain is. If you do something that you're motivated for, passionate about, and believe in, then untold magic will happen. Chapter 2. As Tom sat back and thought about what Michael had said, he was aware of the drinks trolley coming back down the aisle towards him. Olivia drew level to his seat, smiled at him. "Have you finished with your glass, sir?" Tom nodded, handed it over, and as she was about to turn away, his curiosity got the better of him. He'd been thinking about her remarks about her husband and his early retirement, and for some reason what she said had stuck in his mind. "Do you mind my asking, but what kind of things is your husband doing now that he's retired?" he asked. She looked a little surprised at his question, but smiled and nodded as she stowed his glass away safely on the trolley. "Well, he's always drawn and painted ever since I met him, and now he can devote all his time to it. Over the years he's had a few local exhibitions that he got a really good response to, and he sold some paintings, which was wonderful. Then I just wondered why he's waited until he's retired to do it full time," queried Tom, hoping she wouldn't think he was being rude. Olivia hesitated. "I'm not sure why, but probably security had a lot to do with it. The time never seemed to be right, but I'm sure if he had done, he could have made a success of it." "Thanks," said Tom. "I appreciate you telling me. I really wish him well now he's finally doing what he always wanted." She looked a little startled, then slowly nodded, as if in agreement. I guess he is, and thanks for your good wishes." She moved away down the aisle, leaving Tom reflecting on what she'd just said. He just couldn't bear the thought of waiting until he retired to do something that really inspired him, and that he really wanted to do. He was deep in thought, and jumped when Michael tapped him lightly on the shoulder as he stood beside him in the aisle. "You really were miles away, weren't you? Have I given you food for thought?" Michael asked him as he settled back down in his own seat. "Yes, you have, but I was thinking more of something I just asked the stewardess." "Olivia, what did you want to know?" Michael looked at him curiously. Tom unconsciously raised his hands as he turned to reply, as if he was trying to shape his answer before he spoke. "Well, I asked her about her husband's retirement, and it made me realize I don't want to wait that long to do something I really want to do." "Was it just that?" Michael asked him, and Tom hesitated before saying, "No. It was more what she said about why he had waited, about the time being right, and not wanting to take the leap and do the very thing he was passionate about." Michael grinned and leaned over and tapped the notebook that was still on Tom's lap. "I think you're ready for the next part of I Believe. Still interested?" As if a switch had been turned on inside him, Tom realized that there was nothing he wanted more than to discover the rest of the secret to I Believe. He opened the notebook and turned to Michael. "Okay." Michael leaned back in his chair and held up his left hand with the fingers splayed out. With his right hand he touched the fingers as he counted. First we had the letter I, which stands for I Believe. Then the B, for Be Passionate and Want It. Now, he lightly touched his middle finger, we have the E. And you've just described it to me perfectly. "Have I?" Tom asked. "I wasn't aware of it." "No," agreed Michael, "but that's just because you didn't recognize what it was. The E is to extend your comfort zone. And that's probably the reason Olivia's husband never quit his job to become a full-time artist. He was afraid to get out of where he felt safe." "But surely," Tom retorted, "most of us operate in our comfort zone. Is that so wrong?" "No, not necessarily," agreed Michael. "That is, if you want to be most of us. But I thought you wanted to be something better. If you never face your fears about the future and conquer them, then you'll never be successful. We all need to be stretched as human beings in order to grow, but if you don't allow yourself to be challenged, then you actually shrink. Your self-confidence diminishes, and you're simply not being true to yourself. You need to expand your comfort zone by doing something every day that makes you uncomfortable. That's the way you'll move forward. Tom felt a bit daunted by this, but looking into Michael's calm face, he realized that here was someone who, after all, had obviously done that and was sitting here in the best seat in the plane. So he must know what he was talking about. Guardedly, he asked him, "You mean I must take risks more often, right?" "No," replied Michael. "It isn't necessarily about taking more risks. But we'll definitely be talking about risk later on." Pausing momentarily, he looked Tom in the eyes so that he really understood the impact of what he was telling him. "What I'm saying is that to be successful, you must do more things that make you feel uncomfortable, up to a level of discomfort that shows that you are indeed moving forward. Let's try a little experiment. Are you up for it?" "Okay, I'm game. What do I have to do?" Tom sat forward in his seat, ready for whatever task Michael might set him. "Nothing too taxing, don't worry," he reassured him. "Now, just cross your arms in front of your chest." Tom was a bit bemused, but played along with it. Michael solemnly looked at him, but there was definitely a twinkle in his eye. "Now, just notice which arm is on top. Most of us have a dominant side, and you'll always cross your arms the same way." Tom looked down and realized that he'd automatically crossed his arms so his left arm was on top. "Now reverse that so the other arm is on top." Michael watched in amusement as Tom tried to change over, and still ended up with the same arm on top. He tried again, and when he'd done it, Michael nodded. "Now just sit that way for a few minutes. How does it feel?" "Weird. It's just not natural. I don't feel comfortable." "No, it isn't natural, and that's exactly the point," Michael agreed. "It's a small thing, but it's moved you out of your comfort zone. You could also try brushing your teeth with the opposite hand for a few days, but that's not so easy at 30,000 feet. Tom looked uncomfortable, but Michael wasn't letting him off the hook. "Stay like that a bit longer to see if the feeling changes. Let me give you another example. Do you remember when you first met your future fiancée and you were nervous about asking her out?" "Here we go again," thought Tom. "He's going off on another of those sidetracks he seems to like so much." But he nodded in agreement as Michael continued. "Well, you were afraid, but you wanted to get to know her, so you plucked up your courage and asked her out. Now, if you wanted to play it safe, you could have waited and found out more about her, see if you knew anyone who knew her, and try and find out if she was interested in you. By that time, she could have met someone else, and you'd have been too late. But you found the courage to ask her out. You pushed yourself outside your comfort zone, and you got the reward. She's now your fiancée. You tell me, was it worth feeling uncomfortable for?" "Absolutely," said Tom, unconsciously relaxing back into his seat, without noticing that his arms felt a bit more comfortable. "Well then, you understand one of the basic principles of becoming a successful entrepreneur." Once again, Michael ticked off the points on his fingers. You have to start spending a lot of time feeling uncomfortable, face your fears, and take some action. You risked looking like a fool if she'd turned you down, but you were willing to put yourself out there. Let's face it, rejection and failure is part and parcel of life. But the successful entrepreneur is willing to accept that as the norm, deal with it, and carry on. You showed you could do that for love, so why not for business? "Hang on a minute." Tom leaned forward. His eyes were laughing, and his whole face showed an energy Michael hadn't seen in him before. "You telling me that love and business are the same?" "No, I'm telling you that to be successful in business, you have to love what you do. Remember, that was the B. Be passionate and want it. Now you're looking at what you have to do for the next stage, and that's the realization that success lies on the other side of comfort. Sure, you can just stay where you are for the rest of your life. You've already told me you have a good salary, you have security, but you're not happy. I believe that in order to be true to ourselves, we have to take total responsibility and have the courage to make the necessary sacrifices to gain the rewards that we want." Tom, most people, to use your terminology, use only 5 to 10% of their potential. Can you honestly tell me that you are making the most of your talents and abilities right now? While he'd been listening, Tom hadn't noticed that he'd been holding his breath. Now he let it out slowly, realizing the tension that had been slowly developing in him. He felt Michael was challenging him to step up to the plate, and he knew that somewhere along the line he had become afraid to be that visible, to stand out from the crowd. He was aware of Michael watching him, and he spoke rather slowly as he thought about what he wanted to say. I do know that I'm not using all my talents and abilities, probably nowhere near it. But what I've also just realized is that somewhere along the way I've settled for less than the best for myself. Tom wasn't looking at Michael. His eyes were fixed on the ceiling over his head, as if he were looking for the right answer. I thought that if I just stayed where I was, then I could reduce the stress I was feeling. But instead I got more and more pressured. I haven't let myself move out of my comfort zone for years, and I think I got into the habit of not looking to the future because I didn't like what I could see there. Myself in the same job, year after year. Tom unfolded his arms and stretched them out in front of him, as if he was trying to push away that unwelcome vision of his future. Michael offered a sympathetic nod, but wanted to press Tom even harder, to face what it was that had been holding him back. Let me tell you another little secret, Tom, and that is that the way to push out of your comfort zone is to face your fears and limiting beliefs. Now, I've been a runner most of my life, and I'm going to run a marathon in 3 days' time. Do you think most men my age would believe they could do that? Tom had no idea how old Michael was, but he certainly had to be nearing 60, although he looked fit and trim. I guess not, he said. Exactly, Michael said. They believe that they can't do it, so actually they are right. You know the old saying, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you're right. It was Henry Ford who started the Ford Motor Company who said that, and he knew a thing or two about being successful. If you accept as a limiting belief that you can't run marathons all your life, then you won't get onto the starting line. Now, I know I'm not going to finish first, but I believe I will finish, and I don't allow myself to think any other way. I'm ready to keep testing my limits, move myself right out of my comfort zone, because that's when I can be really proud of who I am. Sitting at home watching it on TV isn't the same thing. Now let's hear it. What is your limiting belief? Tom spoke almost without thought, as if he needed to say it fast before he lost the courage to say it at all. When I played tennis, I always believed I would win, and I usually did. For some time, though, I seem to have been losing confidence. I'm not sure if I have that winning streak anymore. Michael let him sit in silence for a moment. Then, when it was clear Tom wasn't going to say any more, he gently said to him, Tom, if you had what it takes to be a winner then, you have it now. What you're faced with is a belief that you no longer can do it. All the things that made you a winner then are still with you. What you have to do is rediscover them. And sure, it might be uncomfortable, painful even, to force yourself to really test your limits again. But until you're willing to stand up and be counted, you won't know what it is you're capable of. As Tom thought about that, Olivia came through the galley with an armful of newspapers and magazines. She came to Tom first, although it was to both of them that she spoke. I know you want all of them, Mr. Redford, but what about you, sir? As Michael reached forward, she gave him 3 newspapers and 2 magazines, one of each that she carried. Tom shook his head, as if he felt he had enough to think about without adding in the day's news. As she moved on, and Michael slid the papers into the briefcase at his feet, Tom asked him, Are you really going to get through all of those? Of course, replied Michael. It's all part of extending your comfort zone. Tom laughed. I wouldn't have thought like that. How is that going to stretch someone like you, except in the time it'll take you to read them? Michael surprised him by not answering straight away, but changing tack once again. I noticed that you never answered my question about how much of your potential you're using, but I hope you're still thinking about it, because you're going to have to answer that question for yourself, if not for me. Don't discount the incredible knowledge we can all get from reading, because it's one of the best ways to increase that potential. I believe that in order to make the most of who you are, then you have to stretch one of the greatest muscles in the body, and that's your brain. Knowledge is power. You need to know what's going on in the world, and you need to have your views challenged. As you well know, the whole world is now accessible to us, through travel and through the internet. There's so much opportunity for knowledge, and it's available to you 24/7. You just have to open your mind and find it. For instance, don't just read the paper that agrees with your take on the world. How's that going to move you out of your comfort zone? You know I said you should do something every day that makes you uncomfortable. Tom nodded in agreement and tried to figure out what was coming next. Well, Michael continued, you also have to do something every day to sow a seed of opportunity. Something that moves you on towards your goal. And all successful entrepreneurs are always looking for an edge, an advantage. That usually comes from being open to new information, and often from the most unlikely sources. I might read a newspaper article about a guy who's trying to develop a new product for large-scale construction work for, say, hospitals, but he can't get the government interested. Now, it might be that I have overseas interests where we have to build hospitals as part of our development plan, and I can see that it might benefit me to get in touch with him. I might have found out about him anyway, but maybe not in time to make him an offer before somebody else gets in. That is my seed. Now, what seeds are you sowing? Tom thought and then said, To begin with, I'm reading Napoleon Hill, and I've met you and started taking notes. Michael reached down and picked up one of the newspapers. Okay. So you think some more about it, and I'll see if there are any new challenges waiting for me in here. He switched on the overhead reading light, opened the newspaper, and began to read, as Tom started writing in the notebook, to make sure he hadn't missed anything. Tom's notes. E. Extend your comfort zone. You must face your fears and limiting beliefs head-on to develop your self-belief. Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right. Henry Ford. You must do one thing each day which makes you feel uncomfortable. You must sow a seed of opportunity every day. Chapter 3. As Tom glanced through his notes, he was aware that around him on the plane people were getting on with everyday things, like dozing with their headrests back, reading newspapers or books, and the woman across the aisle was manicuring her nails a vibrant red and bouncing her foot to the rhythm that only she could hear through her headphones. Normally Tom would have been checking his notes for the meeting, worrying if he'd missed anything, or taking the opportunity to get a bit of extra rest. Now he felt different, somehow more aware of what was going on around him, more engaged with the future, and not just his immediate tasks. Reality had somehow changed, and he was really starting to see things differently. He wasn't sure where he was going, but he knew it was a journey he was ready to take. I really can't believe my luck, he thought. This is just what I needed. Seeing that Michael was still reading, Tom stood up and stretched his arms over his head, rolled his shoulders, and decided to take a walk. He set off up the aisle, and as he passed through from business to economy class, he could see that the entire plane was full, that there was not one spare seat to be had anywhere. Where he had been sitting had been quiet and very comfortable. Here there was a lot more noise, the underlying hum of the engines, the rise and fall of conversations. And yet he didn't feel irritated by it like he usually did. He was grateful for the chance that had moved him up to travel at the sharp end of the plane, and thought that the attendant at the gate had been absolutely right when he said that he had the second-best seat. Being in 1B really was a much better way to travel. As he strolled up the carpeted aisle, he was observing what was going on around him, but in his head he was still engaged with what Michael had told him. He could see that "I believe" was something that he too might be able to use to make the break that he'd been thinking of for so long. When he reached the back of the plane, he saw the stewardess preparing to bring a drinks trolley back towards him, so he turned round and headed back to his seat. Michael glanced up as he arrived and smiled as he saw Tom take his notebook out of his jacket pocket. "Well, I can see you're ready to start again," he said. "Only if you are," replied Tom. "I've been thinking about what you've said, and thinking how lucky I was to be sitting here." "You believe in luck?" Michael asked him. Tom sized him up, wondering if he was being serious. "Of course I do. It's luck that makes all the difference between success and failure. I was lucky to get the seat next to you. Without that, I wouldn't be having this conversation." Michael drew a large tick in the air with his finger. "Yet again you've hit on one of the elements of I believe." Tom laughed. "Now that may have been luck." "So it is luck after all. That's the L in I believe, isn't it?" "It certainly is one of them," agreed Michael, "but not in the way that you probably think. Luck can't be discounted, of course, but it also can't be relied upon. No successful entrepreneur makes a fortune by relying on luck alone. You have to make it work for you." Tom was looking puzzled. "You don't think it was lucky that I was sitting in the one seat on the plane next to the man that could help me see how to move forward?" "No, I don't," replied Michael. "And let me tell you why. Yes, you got the seat next to me, but that was no guarantee that we would have this conversation. What was it, do you think, that started the ball rolling?" As Tom continued to look unsure, Michael helped him out. "It was my seeing that you were reading Think and Grow Rich that started it all. I was intrigued to see you reading it, and that told me something about you. It told me that you were looking to make your life better, and were prepared to stretch out to reach it. Now, you may call that luck, but if you hadn't already bought that book and started to read it, I probably wouldn't have taken the same notice of you. You remember that I said to you how important it was to sow a seed of opportunity every day?" As Tom nodded, he continued. "Well, that book was your seed for today. You create your own luck by networking with influential people, and that book, and your decision to read it, gave you that opportunity. Do you agree?" Tom nodded. "In theory, yes, but I have a question for you. Wasn't it luck that it was you sitting next to me, and not someone who wouldn't have been interested in what I read?" Michael shook his head firmly. "You could look at it that way, but in my view, luck is the crossroads where opportunity and preparation meet. In order to get to that crossroads, you need to create opportunities and do all the right preparation. If you do that, then you could say you're going to be more lucky than most. But if you don't create those conditions, even if you get a lucky break, you won't be prepared to really exploit its potential to the full. If a great business opportunity comes along, but you haven't done your homework, and know all the angles inside out of what you're going into, then all the luck in the world won't help you pull it off." He pointed at Tom's notebook. "From your notes in there, you'll see that we've already talked about how important it is that you continue to learn, read, ask questions, watch trends, and think of how to create connections that only you can see through your map of the world. You don't find opportunities by sitting at home watching TV, and you don't make $1 million by being lucky. The harder you work, the more you create your own luck." Michael watched Tom's face as he absorbed what he'd been hearing. "What I'm saying is that you can't rely on it. You have to keep sowing those seeds every day and see which ones come up. In life, good follows bad. Things go in cycles, and you have to keep going no matter what. Think of how farmers approach their business. Every year they sow their seeds, and they don't know in advance which seeds will grow and which will fail, which year will be a great harvest, and which will be a terrible one. Whatever the outcome, they go on year after year, persistently sowing those seeds. You see, there's such a thing as cause and effect going on here. You told me that you've been reading business development books for quite a while, and that nothing has happened. Well, actually, you were like the farmer, and finally this seed has come good. But if you'd got disheartened and stopped buying and reading those kind of books, then we wouldn't be talking together now. Now do you get it? Yes, I do, and I'm really glad I did keep on going, Tom finally responded. I just always thought that very successful people had more luck than I did. But what you're saying is that they worked harder to make the luck happen. I'm no stranger to hard work, though. In my job I couldn't do any more than I do now, and yet that lucky break still eludes me. Michael's look let him know that he still hadn't got it. Now look, Tom, you have to stop thinking as an employee. This is not about your job. It's about how you approach your life, your future. You need to start thinking like an entrepreneur, and that means focusing on what you're passionate about, what you want to change in your life, and being totally honest with yourself about what you really want. Luck is only one of the elements of the L in I believe. The other L is lies. Because to be a successful entrepreneur means there's absolutely no room for lying. Feeling a bit stung, Tom quickly retorted, "Are you saying I'm dishonest?" "No, at least not in the way you think. What I'm asking is how honest you are with yourself about what you want and what you're prepared to do to get it. Believe me, Tom, I'm not questioning your general honesty, just asking you to realistically look at how much time, energy, and commitment you're willing to give in order to create lasting success. It's not about lying to the world and telling them that you're definitely on course to achieving your goals. It's about being totally, brutally honest with yourself and knowing when you're really telling the truth and when you're making excuses, because actually you're not 100% committed to making it happen. Entrepreneurs have to be honest with themselves if they want to create lasting success. It's about your personal integrity, and that's something you don't want to compromise if you want to be true to yourself. Tom had been leaning forward to catch every word, and now he let a breath out and sat back. He knew Michael wasn't attacking him, just making him really question himself. He hadn't been forced to think so much about himself and what he really wanted for many years, and although it felt strange, it also felt good. I hope I'm completely up for it. I never realized how much I wanted things to be different until I started talking to you. I hate to tell you this, Tom, but hoping for it to happen just isn't enough. You know, we shape our destiny by our decisions. Taking the attitude of what will be is not what successful entrepreneurs do. They know what they want, and they go about making it happen by taking dramatic action, and lots of it. It's another old cliché, but still true, that life is not a rehearsal. You don't get a second chance to polish it and make it right. You just have to take a risk and go for it. Hope won't do it for you. You're the one responsible for making it happen, and if you stay true to yourself and treat others with respect and trust, then you reap what you sow. What you put out there always comes back. So you need to really think about what impact your thoughts and actions will have. Okay, I can see that, and I'm totally willing to do what I have to do to make things happen. Tom sounded eager, but still not completely sure that he understood how to move forward with it. What do you think is the biggest change I need to make? Michael thought for a minute. Get into the good habit of being totally honest with yourself about what you're doing and why you're doing it. Don't let yourself worry if nothing seems to be happening immediately. Just keep on being positive and doing all you can to network and leverage your opportunities. Out of those habits you can create the opportunity to make yourself into that entrepreneur that I think you really want to be. It's really about committing to myself and my idea, isn't it? Yes, Michael agreed. That, and realizing that lies and luck don't work. So what does work? Tom wanted to get to the bottom of it. Well, you'll just have to wait and see. Michael gestured to the aisle where Olivia was approaching them with menus tucked under her arm. Looks like we have to think about what we want to eat, and you have some notes to write up, don't you? Tom turned to a new page and started to gather his thoughts. Tom's notes. L. Lies and luck don't work. Luck. Entrepreneurs create their own luck. Luck is the crossroads of preparation and opportunity. The harder you work, the luckier you become. You must read, ask questions, watch trends, and network to create luck. New opportunities do not come from sitting at home watching TV. You need to get out and create lucky breaks. Remember cause and effect. You must sow the seeds of opportunity every day to reap the benefit in the future. Lies. You must be brutally honest with yourself as an entrepreneur. The only excuses are the ones you tell yourself. Hope is not good enough. Action is what matters. You must have honesty, integrity, respect, and trust. You cannot build lasting success without it. Chapter 4. Olivia passed down the aisle handing out menus, and Tom tucked his in the side of his seat, wanting to make sure he'd written his notes out clearly. Michael had talked about the 8 principles or insights that went into making I believe, and he was beginning to get a glimpse of how it might all slot together. For the first time he could see a path opening up before him, and each of the ideas Michael had talked about were like stepping stones leading from one to the next. He bent over his notebook, making adjustments to what he'd written, and marking comments next to things that had particularly struck him. He wasn't aware of Michael studying him as he wrote, or that Michael was making mental notes of how well Tom was absorbing what he'd said. Olivia had already arrived back to take their orders. Startled, Tom looked up, then shook his head and smiled up at her. "Sorry, I was miles away. I'll have a look now." He put his notebook down and retrieved the menu. "No problem. I'll be back in a couple of minutes," said Olivia as she walked on past them to the galley. Michael had already laid his menu on his knee, as if he'd made up his mind. Tom was still looking at the menu when Michael spoke to him. "You seemed very absorbed just then." "Yes," replied Tom. "I'm beginning to see a pattern of where you might be leading me. But don't worry, I'm prepared for a few detours on the way." Michael laughed. "I'll try and avoid the detours, but I'm glad you're finding what we're talking about useful. Each of the separate principles of I believe is important on its own, but it's when you put them all together and rigorously apply them that you'll really see change happening. There's no self-made millionaire that I know, and I've met quite a few, that doesn't operate from these principles, though they may not all describe them in the same way." He nodded towards the menu that Tom had quickly glanced at, and let fall to his lap as he listened. "If you've made your mind up, then are you ready to move on to the next principle?" Tom closed the menu and tapped the cover with his finger before he gave Michael his full attention. "I'm certainly ready, but this time I don't think I'll even attempt to guess what it might be." "Well, for anyone working in business, and particularly with how you've described your job to me, this should be straightforward," said Michael. Tom relaxed back into his seat. "Okay, you hooked me in again. What is it?" "In a sense, it's one you might think you know already, but I guess I'm going to ask you to think about it a little more deeply," said Michael. This really got Tom's interest, and he barely registered Olivia returning to collect the menus. Her voice was asking what he wanted, and he quickly mentioned the first thing he remembered. As Tom had come to expect, Michael gave her his order rather more calmly. He was impressed by Tom's eagerness to get on, and didn't want to make him wait too long. "Okay, we have a bit of time before our food arrives, So let's examine the next part of I believe. The I stands for install goals. And it's almost like you need to hardwire your goals into your system so that they're running 24/7. It's about programming your subconscious so that the awareness of your goals and what you have to do to achieve them is a permanent program that'll keep prompting you to action. Trust me on this, Tom. If you don't pay real attention to your goals, nothing that you want to achieve is ever going to happen. Tom thought that sounded a bit excessive, but he was willing to hear a bit more. After all, Michael had come up with the goods so far. I guess you're familiar with the concept of setting goals, Michael inquired. Sometimes it feels like I have nothing else but goals, sighed Tom. A list as long as your arm, all relating to work, and most of them unachievable, at least not in the time frame my boss sets. Sounds like mostly externally applied goals to me. The things your boss wants you to achieve, targets you have to get, sure, they're all part of a normal business life, but that's not what I'm talking about. I want you to think outside that employee mindset and move forward to thinking like an entrepreneur. Michael thought for a minute and went on. It's important that your goals have real meaning for you and that it's you who sets them, not someone else. To be a successful entrepreneur, you go back to that passion, that great idea, and create a clear vision of what you want to achieve. And nothing gets achieved unless you have clearly defined goals and a defined plan of action. Let me give you an example. Nowadays, space travel is taken for granted, but that very first step man took on the moon's surface was the most incredible thing any of us could imagine. And it only happened because the USA had a clear goal to get a man on the moon. Not a vague statement about space exploration or investigating other galaxies, but a clear statement of intent. The then US President, John F. Kennedy, in a speech to Congress in 1961, made it crystal clear. He said, "I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth." He set the intention, stated when it should be done by, and it was realized when Neil Armstrong's foot hit the surface. Now that is setting a goal and achieving it. Tom was too young to remember the landing, but he knew it had made history, and his own parents still talked about it as a landmark event in their lives. That was a major event, something to be inspired by, certainly. But when I think about goals, I usually just see them as part of my everyday working life, and frankly, just something to be got through as fast as possible. He hesitated, and Michael nodded, encouraging him to go on. I suppose my experience of goals is that they always seem like a moving target, and not something that I'm choosing. More like, get this one done and move on to the next thing. I can't think about the big picture. I'm too busy doing the next item on the list. Again, you're thinking like an employee. Those goals are not taking you anywhere you want to go, because they're not your personal goals, and they're not serving your bigger vision. There are some basic rules around setting goals. Tom interrupted him. "Oh, yes, I know all about that." Michael shook his head gently and chose his words carefully. "You may know it, but I suspect you don't know why it's so important. The way I see it, with any goals, you need three things: a why, a what, and a how. The why is the motivation, why you really want to achieve this. The what is the goal itself, and the how is the method that will get you there. Let's go back to that example of the moon landing. Tell me what you think is the why." Tom shrugged his shoulders. "My father always thought that it was because the USA wanted to prove that they had the technology and needed to get there before anyone else. The first nation to get to the moon, that was really something. Nobody remembers who came second, but everyone knows it was Neil Armstrong of the USA who got there first. So I guess it was the desire to be the first. National pride, maybe. That was definitely one of the motivators. You know all about the desire to be first. You talked about how great it felt to win a tennis match. So tell me, is that a great motivator for a goal? Tom nodded his agreement, and Michael continued. The what is easy, because we know it was to get a man on the moon. So now, tell me about the how. A heck of a lot of money, research and trial and error, I imagine, responded Tom. And as Michael looked set to help him out, Tom went on. But that's not what you want me to say. I do see that they had to have a great vision, and then break it down into actions that led them to that final goal. The money, the research, the years of work are all about the same thing, aren't they? Being focused on that goal. Absolutely, agreed Michael. They were willing to set a huge, unbelievable goal and dream the undreamable. Something that had only been seen in comic books became a reality. Because they stretched their horizons, they found a way to make it happen. He gestured out of the window of the plane. Do you think we could be sitting here comfortably, moving above the earth, if the Wright brothers hadn't set a goal to fly? I guess none of my goals have been big enough, or what I wanted enough. I go through the motions, but that big goal has always eluded me. Tom was reflective, and Michael gave him a minute before he replied, Tom, I promise you that if you have a definite outcome you're working towards, then the mind at the subconscious level does everything it can to make it a reality. What we direct our thoughts towards, what we think about, produces our reality, because thoughts are things. Believe me, if you can conceive it, you can achieve it. Now, let me ask you something. This big goal that you have in mind, are you really clear about why you want it and what exactly it is? No, I guess it's something about being successful, working for myself, but the details aren't really clear yet, though I feel somehow closer to that after talking with you. Michael drummed his fingers on the armrest as he thought about how to help Tom. First, you need to make finding your business idea a clear goal. Then your subconscious will get to work on producing ideas for you. Just asking your subconscious doesn't do it. You must make it a definite goal, otherwise you have very little chance of achieving it. Tom was making a quick note, so Michael paused for a moment before going on. Now there are some simple practical steps around goals that you need to follow. Tell me, when you've tried to achieve big goals in the past, have you made them clear and written them out? Were they time-based, so that you had a real deadline in mind? Did you have a defined plan of action? And most importantly, did you review your written goals daily? Tom had been absorbed in what Michael was saying, and slowly he shook his head. Lots of questions, but I guess yes and no. I can see that I never followed any kind of plan, really, and although I wrote my goals down, I only looked at them occasionally. Writing your goals down and reading them at least once a day is how you program your subconscious mind to achieve them. It's like a silent message that's transmitted, heard, and acted upon. Just having a goal but not writing it down reduces your chance of achieving it. In my book, a goal unwritten is just a wish. Michael was watching Tom to see what his reaction was to what he was telling him. I always knew it was important to have goals, but you're saying that they're crucial to achieve any real sort of success. Tom underlined what he'd written in his notebook. Absolutely. You need to see your finished goal in your mind, and then write down what you want in less than 10 words. Then keep that written goal in your wallet, and look at it frequently throughout the day, so you're keeping it right at the front of your consciousness. That keeps you focused, and that is fundamental to success. Without focus, you'll just drift, waste your energy, and end up wandering aimlessly. Think of it this way. Goals are dreams with deadlines, and it's the deadline that makes it real. It's as simple as the fact that if you don't know what you want, you'll never get it. So focusing on my goals will keep me focused on that main passion, that dream, and that's how I'll get there. Tom wrote down goals and focus. Yes, said Michael. Now you're looking to the future and beyond your next monthly salary payment. You and I got talking because you had a copy of Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. Well, here's a great quote from it that I learnt many years ago and have written down and carried in my wallet ever since. Read it out. He took out a thin black leather wallet and removed a folded and worn piece of paper and handed it to Tom, who unfolded it, and Michael listened as he read it aloud. There is one quality that one must possess to win, and that is definiteness of purpose, the knowledge of what one wants, and a burning desire to possess it. Tom looked thoughtful, and handed the paper back to Michael, who returned it to his wallet and carried on where he'd left off. To make your goals really happen, Tom, you need to take that to heart, not just read it, but really live it. When it comes to achieving what you want, I've found that there are 4 clear stages. He held up his left hand and tapped his fingers in turn as he listed them. First is stage 1, your dreams, your vision, how they need to become specific goals. Those goals are stage 2, and they lead you to stage 3 as you work out what steps you need to take to achieve that goal. Next is stage 3, where those steps lead you to devise specific tasks to achieve them. Finally, you're at stage 4, where you're turning those tasks into action items. Together, they all create a plan for you to achieve that dream, that goal. Let me give you a real example from your own experience of getting to the airport to catch this flight. Your mind was working towards a definite major outcome. You were absolutely clear that you needed to be here on time, and your mind would not give up on the goal that you should and would make the plane. When you were waiting at that gate, I bet you had only one purpose in mind, and that was to make the flight. Am I right? Tom nodded his agreement, and Michael went on. It is that singleness of purpose, that single-minded approach, that's needed as an entrepreneur. Once you set the goal of making this flight, then all the actions in between are steps to get you to that definite outcome of being on this plane. Tom could follow Michael's train of thought, but wasn't sure that his own goals were going to be that easy to break down. He sighed and tapped the point of his pen against the open page of his notebook. It's just that my goals seem unattainable right now, and I'm not sure how I deal with that. Surprisingly, Michael was enthusiastic about this potentially negative statement. Unattainable goals are great. They force you to think differently. Do you think that those scientists who worked on the space project in the early days thought that it was possible to put a man on the moon? No, they didn't, but they went ahead anyway and discovered new ways to achieve space travel. They had to be creative and inventive and discard what they already knew for what they now needed to know. And they were the people who had to find that solution. It's truly amazing what the human mind can achieve with total focus and concentration. Of course, it took years, but they saw that goal through to the end, and although the action they had to take was massive, it started with them deciding to go for that goal and moving forward one step at a time. What they had to do was start with the end in mind, the man on the moon, and work back to the beginning to see how to achieve it. It's the same for all of us. Once you know what the desired goal is, you see it clearly, and then work back to a place where you can start to take action. That's a lot of focus and concentration, Tom observed. Yes, it is, but it can also be great fun. I bet those people at NASA really enjoyed the journey on the way, the experience of being at the cutting edge of so many new ideas and technologies. All the things they discovered that may not have contributed directly to that first space landing, but which had applications to industry and people's lives in ways they couldn't have imagined. It's not just about the goal, it's about enjoying the highs and lows on the way there. It's about being passionate about life, not just being a spectator. I never thought of goals like that. For me, they were just another part of the daily grind. Now you make them sound more like an epic hero's journey. I guess in a way there are similarities. The sound of a trolley alerted him to look towards the galley, where he could see Olivia coming through the doorway with a couple of trays in her hands. "Well, our hero's journey's going to have to wait a while, as it looks like lunch is on the way. I'm going to write a few quick notes before I eat, while it's still fresh in my mind." Tom ducked his head down and began to write, as Olivia passed a tray to Michael. Tom's notes. I. Install goals. You must have clearly defined, written goals that you're constantly working towards. You must review your goals daily and make sure you still have the passion, belief, and motivation to achieve them. You need to break larger goals down into smaller steps and create a plan of action to achieve them. Goals should be a stretch and almost unachievable. Think big. Think of landing a man on the moon. Written goals program your subconscious mind like no other tool. This is vital. A goal is a dream with a deadline. Chapter 5. Tom leaned back in his seat with a contented smile on his face. That was the best food I've ever had on a plane. No matter what you say, Michael, the fringe benefits of being a millionaire entrepreneur are definitely worthwhile. He stretched his arms above his head and couldn't stop himself from yawning. The only problem is it makes me sleepy. In that case, let's get some more coffee, as you are about to discover the next key part of I Believe. Michael reached up to the bell over his head and pushed his own plate aside as he waited for Olivia to respond. "Don't tell me I have to give up sleep," exclaimed Tom, only half joking. "No, not entirely, but a little-known fact about entrepreneurs is that they only work half days." Anticipating Tom's likely interruption, he went on with a twinkle in his eye, "And as a day is 24 hours, they only work half of that. In fact, most dedicated entrepreneurs will work day and night on a venture or project to see it through to completion." Michael nodded as Olivia came down the aisle towards them. Michael asked her for some coffee for the two of them, and she picked up their plates and went back to the galley. "You want to make sure I stay awake, don't you?" Tom joked. Laughing, Michael returned to his theme. "Tom, you've got to be fully awake to take advantage of the opportunities that come your way. So yes, I want you focused on what I'm telling you. We don't want you to drift into that employee mindset again, but to start applying some of the insights we've talked about, so you're automatically thinking like a millionaire." Tom could see he was very serious about this, and so he nodded and turned to give him his full attention, as Michael leaned forward to emphasize his point. The next letter of I Believe is E, and that stands for Enjoy Hard Work. It's essential for you to understand that just like you have to pay interest on a loan or debt, there is a price to pay for success. To be a really successful entrepreneur, you need to work for around 80 hours a week, and the harder you work, the more successful you are. Do you really think that's just a coincidence? No, they always say hard work brings its own reward, and I certainly work hard, so I already have that principle under my belt. Tom was confident that here at least was something he already knew about and was putting into practice daily. He waited for Michael to continue as Olivia returned and poured them each a cup of coffee. Michael stirred his for a few seconds before replying. "Well, like all the other principles we've already talked about, it's one thing to think you know what they are, and quite another to actually live them. Sure, you work hard, but for someone else. Now cast your mind back and remember the difference between how you feel now and how you felt when you were playing tennis. Did you put in plenty of hours of practice?" Tom shrugged and then took a sip of coffee. "Of course, you don't win without putting in the time and effort on the practice court, but that was different." "How?" asked Michael. Well, for one thing, I so much wanted to win that the hours I put in weren't a problem. And for another, I loved doing it. Pleased with Tom's insights, Michael took a mouthful of coffee before he went on. The great English playwright Noel Coward summed it up very well when he said that work is more fun than fun. He had this image of being a real party animal, always at first nights and glamorous events, but the reality was that he worked incredibly hard every single day to produce the sheer volume of work that he did. At the time, people thought he threw off his plays without any effort, but when his biography came out, it became clear that he had spent the majority of every day writing. He never put it second to any other activity, and that's how he could produce so much work. He was only able to do that because it was totally his passion. When you love doing something, it's never hard work. Tom was never sure where Michael was going to lead him next. Quoting Noel Coward was not something he'd expected from a businessman, but he was coming to realize that Michael was open to all kinds of information and influences. Well, yes, but creative people have to have that passion, don't they? I guess it's what drives them to produce the work they do. It's different for them. No, it's exactly the same. It isn't just creative people, Tom. Being a successful entrepreneur means you have the same drive, the same passion. If you don't have that, you're not going to be willing to do all the things that are necessary. You won't be prepared to work those 80 hours a week and keep yourself focused exclusively on achieving your goals. Without that passion and willingness to work hard and enjoy it, you won't have the self-discipline to turn your winning business idea into a commercial success. Both men had now finished their coffee, and as Olivia passed down the aisle with a fresh pot, they held their cups up for a refill. Tom was turning over in his mind what Michael had just said. He was beginning to realize that here was someone who really practiced what he preached, and he wanted to know more about how he'd become that way. This dedication to hard work, is it something you developed, or did it come naturally? Michael took a moment to consider. I guess you could say it's always been there. I told you my family were market traders, and that's a job where you put in very long hours, so it was in the blood, so to speak. I worked after school with my uncle on most days, so that habit of hard work was developed. Though I'd have to say that my two older brothers never had the same interest I did in putting in extra hours, even for more pocket money. My incentive to work hard was to pursue my passion for running and get the best possible trainers I could to help me do that. From there it expanded, because I found it so interesting and all-consuming that, like you with your tennis, I happily spent all my time on it. Once I started selling to my school friends, and then got my own market stall, I was hooked. I couldn't think of a better way to spend my days than pursuing my passion, so I ended up working at least 12 hours a day, and often more. Like I said, it's not hard work when you really enjoy it. Look at what we've already talked about in I Believe. Those principles of being passionate, having a burning desire to achieve, and total inner belief around a clear goal are all essential. But let me ask you this. How can you make all that happen if you aren't prepared to put in the hours? And why would you not enjoy working hard for something you want so much? Tom could see the sense in what Michael was saying. I know I said earlier that I was used to hard work, but what you're saying is something different. That if I'm enjoying it, it won't seem like hard work, whereas now I do often work long hours, but I resent it because it's doing things I'm not that interested in. That's really what we're talking about here, right? Exactly. Now just imagine what you could achieve by working in exactly the same way, but focused on your own goals and desires. Wouldn't that be something you would be happy doing? As Michael picked up his cup again, Tom felt he had got hold of a valuable idea here and wanted to pursue it. Like I said, everyone believes that hard work brings its own rewards. So why aren't more people successful? Michael laughed. Because, as I keep saying, knowing or believing something and actually doing it are two very different things. Of course you must put the hours in to be successful, but you must also be prepared to make sacrifices too. Self-discipline is very important here, and you have to be ready to sometimes do things that you just don't want to do. Remember I said there was a price to pay for success? Well, working long hours means you may have to choose to do one thing over another. You can't be at an important business meeting in New York and at the men's singles finals in Wimbledon at the same time. You have to choose. And although you could see it as a sacrifice not to be at the sports event, you're simply choosing to do something that's more important to you. Something you love to do and have the complete belief that you can make happen. That's your choice. Once you've put those written goals in place that we talked about before lunch, you'll be checking on them daily, and that energy and focus will open up more opportunities for you. Opportunities that you can't afford to let slip by. You can't let yourself drift mentally. You have to stay completely focused. But if you're doing what you love, it's not hard work. It's as natural as breathing. He watched as Tom made a few notes and then went on. When I was talking about opportunities, there's something else I wanted to mention. It's vital that you are ready to seize the moment. You can't afford to procrastinate and delay before taking action. We talked a while ago about planting seeds of opportunity. Well, you also have to be ready to seize those opportunities the moment they're ripe. If you're prepared to enjoy hard work, you'll be in the right place to keep creating opportunities. But you need to keep hustling for them. Putting a lot of energy behind what you do will create those opportunities, for sure. But you also have to be ready to take immediate action to get the results you want. My father always told me that good things come to those who wait, but I don't think you'd agree with that, would you? Said Tom. To be honest, I've always thought that that's something said by people who don't want to put the energy into making things happen, replied Michael. In fact, I'd go further and say that people who wait are only getting what is left by those who hustle. If you really want to use a common phrase, try, "The early bird catches the worm." Okay, I get it. Tom flipped over the page of his notebook and quickly wrote a few words. I got on this plane thinking I'd have a quick bite to eat, look over some of my notes, and then snooze. Now I'm full of ideas and plans for what else I could be doing with my life, and I don't want to waste any of the time I have available here. He looked a little surprised at what he'd just said, and then added, "What I'm really saying is that, yes, I'm enjoying myself, and you're right. It doesn't feel like work at all." "I'm really glad to hear it," said Michael, and he picked up the newspaper again, while Tom turned to his notebook. Tom's notes. E. Enjoy hard work. Success is simple, but not easy. You must enjoy hard work. Successful entrepreneurs work around 80 hours a week. It is this level of effort that's required to create lasting success. Work must be fun, but if you do something you love, believe in, and are motivated by, the necessary hard work becomes easier and doesn't feel like work. You must have the self-discipline to do the things you don't want to do when you don't want to do them. Entrepreneurs must make sacrifices, although a better definition of this is making choices which take you closer to your goal. Successful entrepreneurs immerse themselves in their business. Time is the most precious resource. Procrastination is the thief of time. Must have urgency as an entrepreneur. Good things come to those who wait, but only what is left behind by those who hustle. Chapter 6. Michael had finished with his newspaper and was glancing through the in-flight magazine, while Tom finished writing up his notes. Underlining a few key points, he sat back, poised for the next installment. Michael looked deep in thought, and Tom coughed gently to indicate he was ready to continue. "I was just thinking about my own career," ventured Michael. "To many, I guess it looks like plain sailing." Tom smiled. "I wouldn't say plain sailing, but like many successful entrepreneurs, part of your skill is making it look easy." "Yes, and I accept that," said Michael. "My businesses have been really successful, I'm proud to say. People often credit me with having the magic touch, or owning some great secret that allows me to be successful where others have failed. You know, it wasn't easy, and I don't believe I have a so-called magic touch, but I do think there's a secret, and I think anyone can find it." Tom second-guessed him. "And that secret is the principles of I Believe that we've been speaking about, right?" "Without a doubt," agreed Michael. "My own journey has always been accompanied by the principles of I Believe. Over the years I've developed and refined them to keep myself on track for success. It's been a journey of constant challenges and opportunities won and lost." Keen to show Michael just how significant this conversation was, Tom interjected. "I already feel excited about applying the principles we've talked about, Michael. I really feel like I'm benefiting from your experience." Satisfied that Tom had fully grasped the importance of these principles, he continued, "Well, the next principle is perhaps the most hidden secret of all, and the one that's absolutely crucial for success. The next part of I Believe is absolutely the one thing that you cannot afford to be without if you want to be a successful entrepreneur." Tom had started to close his notebook, ready to pay attention, but when he heard those words he kept it open and looked back at Michael. "Everything you've said so far makes perfect sense, so I'm all ears to find out what the next one is." He looked down at the page and appeared to be recapping to himself. "OK, we've got to the second E of I Believe, so it has to be V next." "It certainly is. Care to take a guess at what it might be?" Tom laughed. "Well, let's face it, my guesses have been a bit off the mark so far. However, let's see. V could be victory, vanquish, valiant, or vanity, though I don't think so somehow. I know, what about vision? That's certainly essential from all you've said so far." "Good choice, but not what I'm thinking of. It's what I'm sure is the most hidden characteristic of every successful entrepreneur." "Now, this really is going to be interesting," said Tom eagerly. "I hope you're going to put me out of my misery." "Well, it stands for very. In fact, double that, for very, very." Michael was delighted to see the blank look on Tom's face. "Very? No, there has to be more than that. Very, very what?" Relenting, Michael explained. "Very, very persistent." Tom looked a little disappointed, as if he'd expected something much more dramatic than this. "You look unsure, but trust me on this one. If you were to choose just one part of your personality to develop that would virtually guarantee your success, I'd like you to put persistence at the top of your list. You've only just started reading Think and Grow Rich, but you'll see that Napoleon Hill felt so strongly about this subject that he devoted an entire chapter to it. Now, he studied many of the world's most successful people, and he found that all of them had one quality that was lacking in those less successful than themselves. When he looked at people like Henry Ford and Thomas Edison, he realized that the true secret of their success was that they were persistent, way beyond the average. Sure, they were also clever, resourceful, and inventive, but if they hadn't been also very, very persistent, you wouldn't know their names today. Tom wasn't sure that this really was the secret. "You think it was just persistence that made them so successful, that's all?" Michael nodded slowly. "Well, there were other contributing factors, but just think about it. Look back at some of your accomplishments in the past, large and small. You'd have to agree that persistence played an important role in your success, wouldn't you?" Tom leaned his head back and scanned his memory for something that would be relevant to what Michael was saying. And the picture of him accepting a winner's medal for the university team flashed into his mind. Well, yes, you don't win tennis matches by quitting. I guess that's kind of persistence. But why do you say it's the most hidden characteristic of successful entrepreneurs? To be honest, it sounds like quite an obvious one. I'll try and explain. And you mentioning tennis makes it easier because that's a sport where it's really laid out for you to see. How often have tournaments been won not by the best player, but by the one who hung in and waited out and kept chasing down every ball that came their way, no matter how hopeless it seemed? They could be 2 sets down and they just wouldn't quit. They still believed they could win. That's real persistence, and that's how you get to be a champion. Yes, you practice for hours and work on your technique and passionately want to win, but if you aren't also very, very persistent, you won't be successful. I say it's a hidden characteristic because what other people see is the surface stuff. They talk about talent and timing and luck, but what they don't realize is that none of that matters. Successful people aren't quitters. Go back to your tennis days. If you had given up when the game was going against you, then how many matches would you have won? Tom's eyes sparkled with pleasure as he remembered his glory days on the court. I see where you're going with this. I wouldn't have won as many matches, that's for sure. Yeah, Michael agreed. Of course you don't win all of them, but if you don't keep trying, then you'll certainly lose a lot more. Most people just don't see it, but persistence is the single most important thing that makes the difference between success and failure. So I don't have to be that much better than anyone else. I just have to keep going. Tom was still not entirely convinced. This sounded too easy. Persistence is what underlies all the other principles we've talked about. If you want to be successful, that kind of mental strength has to become a way of life, and it starts from I believe. When you read back through your notes, you'll see that. You want to have something so much that it becomes a heated desire, a passion in your belly. You must fall in love with that idea and totally immerse yourself in it, so that your passion is present every day in each action that moves you towards your goal. At that point, persistence will be virtually automatic. You make it sound like the glue that holds everything together. But up until now, I've never really considered it to be so important to success, Tom said, seeing it within the context of the other principles. Well, I can assure you that without persistence, your plans will certainly not succeed. Persistence is a subject I've really studied, and I can tell you one thing I know for certain. Very few people ever, mentally or verbally, say to themselves, "This is what I really want, and I'm prepared to give my life for it." And so they never develop the persistence to achieve it. Persistence is a unique mental strength, and you'll need that to overcome all the obstacles and problems that you encounter in business. You have to learn to never accept no for an answer. You need to keep going until you get the final yes. You know, Michael, I'm not sure I have what it takes, Tom said slowly. Willpower has never been exactly my strong point. Sometimes I've been more successful than others, but there have been lots of things I've started but not finished. I didn't stick it out to the end. So what does that say about me? I don't think it says you have no willpower. Plenty of people have a very strong will, but they can still lack the persistence required to achieve their goals. Generally, in my experience, if someone lacks persistence, it's because they're putting effort and energy into a goal that they're not truly passionate about. In that case, there's no huge desire to pull them forward. Although willpower is important in moving you towards a goal, if there's ever a war between the will and the imagination will win every time. Tom jumped in as he wasn't sure he was following this. Hang on a minute. How did we get onto imagination? I thought we were talking about persistence. We are, and we're also talking about all we've seen so far in I Believe. Michael ticked them off on his fingers as he listed them out. Be passionate, extend your comfort zone, lies and luck, and installing goals. They're all linked by your persistence. When I talk about a war between the will and the imagination, what that means is that you're powered by desire and fueled by the dream you hold. Once you start to use your imagination to help you build a bigger picture of your dream, to define and refine it until you get it just right in your mind, the emotion that's triggered by that desire far outweighs any force that may be caused by sheer will alone. It's easy to find people who are persistently doing what they don't want to do and achieving results that they don't want. A lack of persistence is not their problem. They're applying it to the wrong thing, to something they're not passionate about. Vision and desire have to be the focus of your attention if you're going to develop persistence into the great ally it can become. Tom had been listening intently, and Michael could almost see his thoughts whizzing around his brain as he processed what was being said. So, therefore, once I've found that source of my passion, my idea, is it persistence that'll keep me going? I've been thinking about whether I had the talent or the ability to really succeed, but this means looking at what I really need in a very different way. It does, doesn't it? If persistence is taken with the other qualities of the millionaire mindset, such as passion and self-belief, it can be an extremely powerful tool. Let me give you an example. The very first man to climb Everest and successfully return was Sir Edmund Hillary in 1953, with his Sherpa guide Tenzing Norgay. Now, Hillary had tried and failed to climb Everest in the previous 2 years, but he was absolutely immersed in his vision and desire to see himself standing on the top of that great mountain. Whatever obstacles stood in his way, he persistently kept going to overcome them, because he was emotionally involved with that image of himself. Of course, he was a courageous and a skilled climber, but without being tenacious and persistent, he wouldn't have gone back for that third attempt. Tom had been unconsciously doodling a picture of a mountain in his notebook, and Michael glanced down at it. He took his own pen out and held his hand out for the notebook. Tom handed it over and watched as Michael added 4 crosses from the bottom of the mountain to the top, and numbered them 1 to 4, then passed the book back. Tom looked at it for a moment, and then gave an inquiring look. Those are the 4 steps that anyone can take to ensure they develop the persistence it takes to get to the top of the mountain. Number 1. Have a clearly defined goal that you believe in, that you're passionate about, and you have an intense desire to reach. Number 2. Create a clear plan that you can begin working on immediately, and anchor this with immediate and constant action. Number 3. Immerse yourself in the achievement of your goal. Many people will try and knock you off your track. Listen to them and learn from them, but remain focused on your ultimate objective. Number 4. Surround yourself with the talented people who share your belief and passion, and who can help you achieve your goal. As Tom wrote the 4 steps out, Michael wanted to really impress on him how important this quality was to his future success. Persistence is a formidable force. Simply put, it achieves results. Those who accomplish success are the ones who have the mental strength and stamina to keep going when others around them are giving up. Do you accept the importance of persistence in all of this now? Tom nodded. Yes, I do. If you'd asked me before this flight, I probably would have said it wasn't that important. But I see now that it's all about determination and doggedness, never quitting, never giving up. Yes, it's the ability to stay focused, keep going, and never give up until you've achieved your desired outcome. It's a fundamental quality of winners. And like I said earlier, it's about learning never to accept no for an answer. Tom had heard this said before, but wanted to challenge him on it. But do you really mean never? Surely there are times when you have to accept that it really is no. If you really love what you're doing and believe you're right to be doing it, then why would you accept no for an answer? Michael responded. Tom gathered his thoughts. So what you're saying here is that entrepreneurs are passionate, almost obsessed by what they do. They live and breathe their work, and they certainly don't understand if you say no. They'll just keep on until they wear you down. Well, that's not the most effective way to achieve a yes, laughed Michael. One thing you learn is that you have to be agile and flexible, creative even, when you're faced with a no. If somebody says no, find a different way to get to yes, by breaking the rules or thinking differently. In fact, do whatever it takes. Do you remember I told you I started out by selling trainers? Tom nodded, and Michael went on. Well, I was only 16, with no capital and no track record, and none of the big suppliers would give me the time of day. I tried and tried, and then I started thinking how else I might get stock. I approached small shoe shops and offered to buy lines that weren't selling. I found out about bankrupt sales, and gradually I got stock to sell. I kept records of what I'd sold, and then went back to the bigger suppliers to show them I was being successful. They still said no, but I kept going back until finally one of them said yes. It's sometimes a matter of timing, but if you keep going, you'll eventually get there. That's a good example of you making it sound so easy, Tom remarked, smiling. Don't mistake me, it's not easy, but if it's what you love, you make it happen. Most people give up before they get to their goal. In fact, only 1% ever get to the yes. But imagine what it feels like to be that 1%. Tom's mind was racing, and he had the feeling that he'd just been given one of the most important pieces of information in his life. I think you've just given me a magic wand that I can really see how to use. Michael was delighted. It's not so much a magic wand as an inner core of strength that can support you all the way to the top. I like to imagine it as an iron rod engraved with the words persistence, courage, vision, desire, passion, and determination. And that's my backbone. That's what supports me. You have the potential for that same iron rod and all those qualities within you right now. It's simply your choice if you wish to use it or not, but imagine how invincible you'd be if you did. Michael stood up and rolled his shoulders. I've been doing a lot of talking. Time for a bit of exercise, I think. He smiled at Tom and moved past him into the aisle. Tom was left staring at his notes and wondering just what his next step was going to be. Tom's notes. V. Very, very persistent. Persistence is the most hidden trait of successful entrepreneurs. Persistence is not willpower. It's much stronger, and it's grounded in belief, passion, and desire. Most people give up before they reach their goals. Successful entrepreneurs do not. Entrepreneurs never accept no for an answer, and are flexible and creative in the pursuit of turning a no into a yes. Entrepreneurs are prepared to break the rules, think differently, do whatever it takes to achieve their goals. This requires them to step outside of their comfort zone. Chapter 7. After Michael had walked away, Tom started to review his notes. He soon realized that there was a constant thought running through his mind. He could finally glimpse what it might be like to be successful, and the germ of an idea had planted itself in his brain and was running riot. He kept returning to it, testing it, and looking at it from all the angles. Could this really be the business idea he'd been waiting for? He looked again at the mountain Michael had drawn in his notebook, and imagined what it would be like to be standing on the pinnacle of success, and what the view from the top would be like. He was vaguely aware of the other passengers around him. The woman across the aisle had long ago finished painting her nails, and was now flicking through a weighty cream leather folder filled with brochures and what looked like sales material for conferences. Tom wondered if she could see the difference in him. He certainly felt different, and couldn't imagine that he didn't look different too. He'd got on the plane feeling anxious and preoccupied. Now he was feeling energized, and yet somehow more relaxed. The thought that had been chasing round his head suddenly became loud and clear, and he knew he had to write it down before it escaped him. It wasn't more than a sentence or two, but using Michael's terminology, that he was now feeling more familiar with, he recognized that it was truly a seed of opportunity. He hardly looked up when Michael came back down the aisle at a leisurely pace, stopping to speak to a man several seats away before making his way back. He saw Tom was deep in thought, and instead of sitting down, he carried on into the galley, where his deep voice could be heard talking to Olivia. Tom looked again at what he had written, and then became conscious of Michael heading back to his seat. He straightened up and got his thoughts together. "You look totally preoccupied there. What was it you were so involved in?" Michael made himself comfortable, and Tom wondered whether to tell him how enthusiastic and energized he felt, and that he'd had the inkling of a business idea. He hesitated, and realized he didn't want to share the idea until he'd had a bit more time to think about it, but he didn't want to lie to Michael either. "I think I've got a possible business idea, but if you don't mind, I'd rather not talk about it just yet. I want to think about it a bit longer." Michael nodded approvingly. "No problem. But if you've had a great idea, then it's definitely time I shared the last principle of I believe with you." Tom was delighted to hear that. It was just what he wanted. In fact, it was perfect. He held up his notebook and pen to show that he was all ready to go. "Okay, so we've got to the final E of I believe. And it's the one I think most people fail to realize is equally as important to success as any of the others." Tom was keen to contribute. "Let me have one final try at guessing what it is. I might be luckier this time." "Well, you're already showing persistence," laughed Michael, "so go ahead." He leaned back as Tom thought over what was left that made a successful entrepreneur. The first E was about extending your comfort zone. The second E was enjoy hard work. So I'm guessing that the last E is for energy, enthusiasm, exceptional. Am I close? Michael laughed out loud at the concentration on Tom's face. He obviously wanted to get this final one right. "Yes, all those are great qualities, though not the one you'll need for the final principle of I believe. Do you remember when I talked a while ago about my sports business?" Tom nodded, and wondered what was coming this time. He was now used to the way Michael's mind moved from subject to subject, and instead of disconcerting him, it intrigued him to follow where his thoughts were going. The final E was a lesson I learned quite early on, and that was to expect failure. I used to read a lot in those days, in fact everything I could get my hands on, and there was a quote that really stuck with me. It was from a politician, and he said that success is going from failure to failure without a loss of enthusiasm. In fact, I'd go further and say that you need to view failure as an integral part of your overall success. Tom was beginning to feel confused. He was absolutely fired up to hear the last secret to being a successful entrepreneur, and here was Michael talking about failure. Well, he knew to go with it because everything else Michael had talked about made sense. There must be something he just wasn't seeing. I don't understand how failure is necessary to success. I can see that no one is successful all the time, but you said that it was an integral part of it. How does that work? Michael thought for a moment of how to really make this last principle of I believe as clear and as explicit as he could. He looked out of the plane window. Outside there was nothing to see but a huge expanse of white cloud. That blank canvas helped him focus his thoughts on what he knew for most people was a topic to be avoided at all costs. When I had a chain of sports shops, I was looking around for another business venture, and one of the things that really attracted me was the idea of a specialist magazine devoted to running. Now, running is truly my passion, and has been since I was a boy. It's what got me started in business in the first place. When I looked at the market, there didn't seem to be a magazine that filled that gap, so I decided this would be a great opportunity to combine business with pleasure. I researched it, got all the right people on board to write the articles, take the photographs, and sell the advertising. Writers with specialist knowledge, who were as keen as I was to see a magazine devoted just to runners. All the omens were good. I'd checked it out, and yet within a year it was obvious that it was a failure, and I had to pull the plug on it. Tom was intrigued. He'd somehow thought that everything Michael touched turned to gold, and this was a new side of him that he was seeing. He hoped Michael wouldn't be offended, but he really wanted to know more about it. "You seem very calm about it for something that was so close to your heart." "Sure, I'm calm now, though at the time I was very upset because I'd lost a lot of money. Also, it was the very first time I'd failed at a major business venture, and maybe my pride was hurt a bit too. But it turned out to be a true blessing in disguise. It's just not always obvious to you at the time, but failure is one of your greatest teachers. You have to learn from it and make sure you don't make that mistake again. Failure is how you gain experience in ways you wouldn't otherwise have access to. Look, we all make wrong decisions at some time or other, but it's essential that you treat it as a learning experience, and the wisdom you get from that mistake or failure will help you to be even more successful in the future." Michael was very sincere. Tom could hear it in his voice, and he thought deeper about what he was saying as he listened to Michael elaborating on the lesson he wanted him to learn. "What I really want you to get from my example of that failed magazine is that it's essential for any successful entrepreneur to be prepared to fail, to expect failure as part and parcel of your business. As I said, you learn more from failure than from success. Failure creates wisdom. And believe me, in my book, it's not the person who fails that's the problem. I believe that it's those people who never get started on their dreams who are the real failures." Tom was absorbed in this, and it went against most of what he'd been taught to believe. At school, at work, at home, in all those places his experience was that failure was something shameful, to be quickly buried and not mentioned ever again. He'd never come across it being given such a positive spin before, and he was having trouble adjusting to the idea. He wanted to share this with Michael to see if he could get it straight in his head. "I have a couple of thoughts about failure, and they're nothing like the ones you're talking about. It's always been something to be afraid of and to avoid mentioning, certainly around my peers. They only want to hear about success." Michael considered this before replying in a confident, firm voice. "That's the employee mindset talking again. When you know someone else is holding you accountable for every mistake, like your boss or your employer, then you don't want to be seen failing. When you have the millionaire mindset, you realize that out of every failure an equal and powerful seed of opportunity comes, if you're willing to look for it. And those opportunities are a chance for even greater success. No successful entrepreneur has got where they are without a considerable number of failures. It's what they learn from. In fact, you could argue that if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough." "What?" Tom was startled and amused. "Trying hard to fail? That's certainly a novel idea." "No, not trying hard to fail. Just trying, over and over again. You remember about being very, very persistent? You're not going to have a 100% success rate, so you need to accept that as part of the game and use what you learn to move on. Look, entrepreneurs don't always have all the answers they need as they run their businesses. In fact, they often make it up as they go along. They even get it wrong sometimes, but they keep on trying. After each failure, you will know more, plan better, and avoid the same mistakes. Do you see what I'm getting at?" Tom was writing so fast he thought he didn't even want to pause to agree, so he just nodded and carried on writing. Michael watched him and waited until he'd finished. What I'm saying is that failure is not the problem. It's how you deal with it that matters. That's what I meant with that quote I gave you just a few minutes ago. Success is going from failure to failure without a loss of enthusiasm. So you can see exactly why it's essential that you stay optimistic and positive, because in business, what can go wrong will go wrong. It's up to you whether you see that cup as half full or half empty, but whichever you choose will make a difference to the outcome. You learn to deal with it and move on, and you can't afford to sit around worrying about it or what the consequences might be. You could end up not taking any action at all, and that could be disastrous. Tom could see what Michael was getting at, though the remark about consequences had him thinking. He felt it was time to get some more clarification, to be sure he was on the right track. I feel a bit uncomfortable with the idea of not being concerned about the consequences of decisions. Shouldn't you care about the outcome? Michael looked a bit surprised at this, but could see that there had been a genuine misunderstanding. No, I'm not saying you don't care about the consequences at all. Yes, you do need to think them through carefully. But what I'm saying is that you can't worry about them and let that prevent you making a decision and moving on. That's just you protecting your business, and to do that, you might have to take a risk. Your job is to deal with problems so that whatever the business needs, you put that first as your top priority. Sometimes that means taking a risk, and you're not always going to know what the outcome might be. But in some situations, taking a risk can be the most sensible response to a problem. Tom now found he had another concept to get his head around. The idea that risk was sensible was certainly not one he'd come across before, and he felt it needed a bit more explanation. He could hear the stewardesses loading up the duty-free trolley, and the chink of bottles and rustle of cartons made him speak quickly to get an answer before they were interrupted. I'm not sure I understand how a risk can be sensible. Surely the very nature of risk is the direct opposite of that. Michael listened, but it was clear he didn't agree. I can see why you may think that, but risk for me is all about judgment, and judgment comes from wisdom. We just talked about how you get wisdom from your failures, and that experience and knowledge helps you calculate what the actual risk is. That's what successful entrepreneurs are doing every day. And although to those outside the business it might look like they're taking huge risks, to those on the inside, who know what those decisions are based on, they see only that it's a calculated risk. Once you bring your experience and judgment into the calculation, you have minimized that risk. Michael leaned back and seemed to be searching for something else to help Tom really get it. Let me give you an example. Like I said, all my life I've been a runner, first as a sprinter, then middle distance, and now marathons. Now you might say that for a man of my age to be running a marathon is a risk. I might not stay the course. I could get cramp, push my heart rate too high, and possibly have a heart attack or collapse. Now all of those are risks. The fact is, because I've been running since my teens, I'm very fit, and I know the limitations of my body. Over the years I've adjusted to my age and ability, and I know I can run a marathon. I've calculated the risk, and it's an acceptable one. Now my goal is to finish that marathon. Once it would have been to win it, but if I tried to do that now, then that would be an unacceptable risk. It would be pushing my body beyond its limits. That's the sum of the wisdom and experience I've gained from running other marathons, and that enables me to calculate the risk. Some people still might say that it's too risky, but I don't. Now do you get it? Tom was thinking this through, and he realized that for Michael, risk meant something entirely different. Now he could see it in a more positive light, but just how it was connected to the idea of failure, he wasn't entirely sure. He realized he'd been doodling on his notepad while Michael was speaking, and that he'd put the words risk and failure in two separate bubbles, with arrows between them and a large question mark over them. So, for you, risk and failure are related in some way? Michael thought about it for a moment. You know the old saying that risk brings its own reward? Tom nodded, and Michael continued. Well, I definitely see a connection between risk and failure. We've seen that you need judgment to take risks, and you learn judgment from your failures, because that's how you get vital information for the future. You could even say that the more failures you have, the better your judgment, providing you learn the lessons from it. With better judgment, you can take bigger risks and get those bigger rewards. So, failure isn't such a bad thing after all, is it? Now Tom got it, and he really liked the idea. He'd never really thought about it before, but as Michael had talked about failure, he thought back again to his father and how he was always afraid to take a risk. He had once tried to run a small business that had started out as a favourite hobby, but it had failed within a few months. He'd never talked about it or how he felt about going back to his old job. Growing up, Tom had realized it was a no-go area, that no one in the family mentioned it, and it had colored his father's whole attitude to life. He had certainly always seen the cup as half empty, and with that realization, what Michael said made perfect sense. I've seen what happens when someone just accepts failure and doesn't try again. It's always seemed like such a huge thing to be overcome, but you are making failure seem almost ordinary. Michael heard something in Tom's voice that made him pause. He'd struck a chord, and he wanted to help Tom look at failure as something positive, not anything to be ashamed of. Maybe it's the word failure that's the problem. There's so much emotional baggage around it, and you can feel shame, anger, grief, blame, or a host of other things. What I suggest is you try thinking of it not as failure, which is something huge and can be very scary, but as a mistake, which is ordinary and everyday. Every one of us makes mistakes, and we accept them, pay for them if necessary, and move on. If you know anyone who's never made a mistake, then let me know, because I've certainly never met one. Tom smiled slightly. A mistake certainly doesn't sound as threatening as failure, I must admit. Exactly. If you've made a mistake, you write it off to experience, cut the ties, and don't waste any more time on it. Learn the lesson and take action to bring it to a close, rather than let things fester without taking action. This is important, Tom. Action to bring mistakes to a close is essential. Don't be in any doubt about it. Being a successful entrepreneur carries a significant degree of stress, worry, and pressure, perhaps considerably more than being an employee. When you work for someone else, you can always leave and get another job. If it's your own business, then it's up to you to make sure that the business survives, come what may. You may not be able to walk away from it without losing everything you own. That is stressful, and you minimize that by being in control of all the elements involved, at least as much as you can. The more you're in control, the less room there is for things to go wrong, and so less need to feel worried or pressured. Take the advice from a man who knows all about pressure. The way to deal with it is to make fast decisions and take immediate action. Even if the decisions are wrong, suggested Tom. I'm sure more will be right than wrong. As I just said, we all make mistakes, but it's how you deal with them that makes the difference. Satisfied, Tom leaned back in his seat. He now had the 8 principles of I believe. All he had to do was put them into practice. He smiled at Michael as he started writing up his notes, and felt he just had to say thank you. Michael, you've been really generous sharing these secrets with me. I'm so grateful to you. Thanks a lot. Michael smiled back. No problem. I really hope you achieve the success you're looking for. Tom concentrated on writing his notes, but jumped slightly when he felt Michael lightly touch his arm to get his attention. Oh, and by the way, that isn't quite the end. There's an extra secret you need to really make it all happen. But that can wait just a while longer. Delighted with the disconcerted look on Tom's face, Michael glanced over as he heard Olivia approaching with the duty-free trolley. He reached into his inside jacket pocket to get his wallet, as Tom got down to finishing his notes. Tom's notes. E. Expect failure. You must expect failure as part of your journey of success. Failure and success go hand in hand. You cannot have one without the other. Success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. Wisdom and judgment come from failure. You learn more from failure than success. Failure is a great teacher. With wisdom and judgment, you can take larger calculated risks, which is essential to great success. Be prepared to fail. Those who fail to start are the real failures. Failure can always be turned into a positive. Make sure you look for the new seeds of opportunity that come from it. Failure is a strong word with negative connotations. In reality, you will have made a series of mistakes. Learn from those mistakes, and do not make them again. If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. Chapter 8. Michael was in conversation with Olivia about what he might want from the duty-free trolley. They were laughing about his usual dilemma in choosing a gift, and Olivia held out a bottle of perfume, which she assured him was a great choice, and proceeded to wrap it up. Tom thought to himself, not only was Michael a really sharp guy, but he also obviously thought about those close to him. Tom interrupted Olivia, asking if he could also get one for his fiancée. Taking the duty-free bag from Olivia, Tom turned back to his notebook. He was busy getting his thoughts straight about what Michael had just told him, about the extra secret that he had been holding back until now. Even while he was occupied with that thought, in another part of his brain other ideas were being formulated, looked at, discarded, or held on to for further development. He knew he had the beginnings of a business idea for himself that had been slowly emerging as he listened to the wisdom that Michael had passed on to him. He smiled to himself as he realized that Michael was right yet again. Once you got the right idea, it wouldn't leave you alone. He glanced down at what he'd written and saw he'd underlined Michael's last words about that extra secret and couldn't wait to have the whole thing complete. Tom turned to Michael. You promised me an extra secret, and I know I'm being impatient, but please, let's get to it now. Why not? Agreed Michael. But before we do, I just want to make sure you've got the others safely under your belt. Run through them for me so that you can see exactly where the last one fits in. By the way, it's not really a secret, but I do call it the magic ingredient, because it's the one that binds all the others together. So, let's hear from you. Michael gave Tom his full attention, and although it felt a bit like an interview, or being called in front of the principal at school, Tom was ready to go for it. He'd been reading and rereading his notes throughout the flight, so he was feeling fairly confident. To underline that fact, he closed the notebook and spoke directly from his memory and of what was on his mind. What I've understood and seen from what you've told me is that I believe is a great way to focus on and remember all the things that are required to be a successful entrepreneur. Unconsciously copying Michael's earlier gesture, he ticked each item off on his fingers as he mentioned them. First, the I, which stands for I believe in myself and my ability to reach my goals. Then B, which is the be passionate and want it. So you totally desire those goals and are totally motivated to reach them. E is the willingness to expand my comfort zone and really stretch myself. He hesitated for a moment, then went on and touched his ring finger for emphasis. L reminds me that lies and luck don't work. And what I really remember from that is you telling me that luck is the crossroads of preparation and opportunity, not something I'd thought of before. He glanced at Michael. How am I doing? Michael smiled and made a gesture for him to continue. I, for installing goals, was perhaps one of the easiest to understand, because it's something I'm familiar with. What I hadn't realized was the importance of writing goals down, and really paying daily attention to what you've set yourself, as it'll make a big difference to what I can achieve. Now, this next E. He looked again at Michael to be sure he had his full attention, and Michael nodded encouragingly. Hard work, again, is something I thought I knew all about, but the concept of having to enjoy hard work, well, that took some thinking about. I've always worked hard, but never dreamed it could be enjoyable. I thought of it more as something you just had to do, and whether you enjoyed it or not wasn't really relevant. What you made me understand was the pleasure and excitement that can come from working on something you love, not something you're just doing for the sake of a salary. Michael was delighted at how Tom had taken to heart all he'd told him, and wanted to encourage him further. You're sounding like a genuine entrepreneur now, Tom, so keep going. Right then, I will. Moving on to the V of very, very persistent was also an interesting one for me. Sure, I know how to stick at something, but the commitment of never giving up and always trying to find a creative way to turn a no into a yes was a real learning experience. The last one, though, was definitely moving me into unfamiliar territory. That final E for expect failure was a bit harder to grasp. In the end, I got what you meant when you said it was truly an integral part of being successful, because you have to learn from your mistakes and be prepared to take action and move on. He tapped the notebook with his right hand. I hope I haven't left anything out, but that seems to me to be the blueprint for entrepreneurial success. Michael was impressed. He'd thought that sharing with Tom some important facts about being a successful entrepreneur would pass the time on the flight for him. But the ease and speed with which he had absorbed them, and really taken them to heart, convinced him that Tom was really ready to learn that last secret. Well, Tom, I have to say you've really impressed me. I'm delighted at how you've taken everything we've talked about, and really understood what I'm trying to pass on to you. Yes, I think it's definitely time you got that last link, my secret ingredient, that'll make a crucial difference to how successful you are. Ready for it? I told you before, I can't wait. I'll just turn to a new page, and off you go. Tom opened up his notebook, and Michael told him what he wanted to know. The magic ingredient is all about teamwork. First of all, you have to realize that A, you can't do it all by yourself. You may have terrific business ideas, but it's impossible for you to be good in all areas and to give all areas equal focus. To be a successful entrepreneur, you don't need to be a great accountant or business manager. What you really need to know is point B, that actually you get a much greater impact from a group working together than you will if you try and do it all by yourself. It's all about the synergy of teamwork, because as soon as you get 2 or more people focused on a problem, then the magic starts to happen. Of course, each person makes a valuable contribution in their own right, but together they can do so much more. Just looking at the maths, it's 2 + 2 = 4. But when those 4 people are really sparking as a team, they produce a creative synergy that pushes that result from a 4 to a 5. It's because they support, challenge, and motivate each other to greater action. On your own, you can get bogged down in detail. In a team, you can delegate, and you can get feedback from others to show you where you are and to stop you from procrastinating. It's important to get things right, but it's even more important to get things going, and that's what a great team will help you to achieve. Michael's face was alert as he talked about the qualities needed, and it was obvious that he thoroughly enjoyed working with others. Tom asked him if that was the case, and Michael nodded vigorously in reply, and expanded what he'd just been saying. The real secret of lasting success is that you can't do it alone. Ultimately, your success is a product of how good the people are that you surround yourself with. Remember how we talked about the moon landing? Well, Neil Armstrong was the figurehead, the entrepreneur, if you like. But there was no way he could have taken that first step on the moon without an amazing team around him, in that spacecraft and back on the ground. That whole team had to have that same passionate desire and be totally motivated to get him to the moon. They were working as one unit with the same goal, and they produced the most spectacular result. They put his feet on the moon's surface. Now, he certainly wanted to be the one to get there first, but without the whole team behind him with that same desire, it would not have happened. From the scientists to the switchboard operators, everyone played their part because they got inspired by the vision of America putting the first man on the moon. Once you get that kind of teamwork and support, then you can get amazing, incredible results. I understand you need to have support, but surely it's the entrepreneur who really gets things done? Asked Tom. Michael shook his head decisively. One of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make is to believe they can do it all by themselves. In reality, most are not equal to it, because being an entrepreneur, starting a business, and taking a product or service to the marketplace is an uphill challenge and struggle. A lot of people delude themselves about their abilities. Or if we go back to the principles of I believe, they may have some of the qualities needed, but be missing a vital one. After all, the entrepreneur sees the big picture, the opportunity. That's their unique talent. But what they then need to do is get a team to help them realize that vision. When I bought a chain of sports shops, I didn't sit down and devise the marketing plan in every detail or micromanage the figures. I oversaw it, yes, but I had people that I trusted to do that, who were actually much better at marketing and financial planning than I was. To be a successful entrepreneur, you have to learn how to surround yourself with people who add to your skills so that together you can produce much better results. I told you it can be an uphill struggle, so having good staff or partners will be the key to your longevity. We've talked about how important it is to be persistent, and trying to go it alone means you can get more easily discouraged. Having the support and input from others will help you keep going. Don't underestimate the power of persistence. It's absolutely crucial. And if only 1% of approaches get to that final yes, that means 99% have given up before they get to that point. Support and a great team means you're able to hang in there longer, right to the end. I suppose in every successful business you tend to just notice the person at the top, and they certainly couldn't have got there without help, I agree with you, but surely the entrepreneur is responsible for leading and inspiring the team. Tom was curious, as it sounded as if Michael was downplaying the importance of the entrepreneur, and that just didn't fit with anything he'd said so far. Absolutely right. The entrepreneur is responsible. They are the figurehead and get all the publicity. But believe me, if you take a close look at them, they've achieved their success because they have a great team around them in which they have total confidence. Having a great team is not an optional extra for me. It's a simple necessity that makes absolute business sense. It's like having a great winning football team. The manager doesn't have to be a player, but they have to bring together all the different talents that make up a team and know how to bring the best out of each team member so that they win their games. It's the same for an entrepreneur. They have to assemble the right team and use all of their different skills to bring about their vision. They don't have to do it all by themselves. In fact, their business will suffer if they do. Michael leaned back and looked inquiringly at Tom. So you think you've understood how important that magic ingredient is? While he'd been listening to the words, what Tom had experienced was the real warmth and sincerity of what Michael was telling him. It felt like he'd been given a terrific present, just like putting the last piece in place in a jigsaw, and really seeing the whole picture for the first time. I have, and I can now really see my business idea taking shape. Can I run through it with you now, if that's okay? Over their heads, the fastened seatbelt lights went on, and they heard Olivia's voice, requesting all passengers to put their seats in the upright position and fasten their seat belts to prepare for landing. Michael turned to Tom with a look of genuine curiosity and a slight challenge in his voice. "Well, here's your first test. You'll have to be succinct and clear to get your idea across before we land, as you've got about 5 minutes. Tom wasn't worried. This idea had been filtering through to him the whole journey, and each time he got another one of the 8 principles of I believe, it had become stronger and clearer to him. His only concern was what Michael would think of it. He might be unhappy at the idea, but the only way to find out was to go for it, so he took a deep breath. "Everything you've told me about I believe has convinced me that it's a remarkable tool to help anyone who wants to become an entrepreneur. You've generously shared it with me, and as I've been writing my notes, I kept thinking about how valuable it would be to pass that on to others as well. Do you agree?" Michael looked at him keenly, and after a moment's consideration he nodded his agreement, and Tom held up Michael's notebook as he continued to talk. "Well, I'd like to take these notes and turn them into a course to help others get started, and to think differently about being an entrepreneur. You've helped me move from an employee to a millionaire mindset, and I want to give others that opportunity as well. Would you be willing to let me use these notes to do that?" Michael was genuinely surprised. "I didn't think that would be the outcome when I offered you my spare seat. But, yes, I think it's a great idea to share it with others. So what's your next step going to be?" Tom took an even bigger breath and hoped this came out right, and with the result he wanted. "Well, actually, I'd like to ask you if you'd be a mentor for me on this business idea. It would mean a lot to me. But first, these notes are going in a very safe place until I can get them typed up." Tom went to tear the pages out of the notebook, but Michael stopped him. "No, you keep it as a symbol of how this first started. And as for being your mentor, it's very important to me that I'm able to give something back for all that I've received, so yes, you can count on me for that." You'll soon see, Tom, that all successful entrepreneurs recognize that they need to give something back for everything that they've received. I'm more than happy to have shared my experience with you, and for you to use our conversation to help others be successful as well. Just remember that you too must give something back from your success, because that's the way the flow continues. The more successful entrepreneurs you meet, the more you'll realize that they do want to give something back to society, and you will be part of that. Tom was so pleased to hear that Michael would be there to support him, and his mind was racing with all the ideas and plans that were just bubbling up. What Michael had given him was incredibly valuable, and Tom knew that there were other millionaire entrepreneurs who would have ideas and inspiration to offer and add to what Michael had said. He started jotting names down that came to mind, famous entrepreneurs he'd read about in the papers or seen interviewed on television, and soon had a shortlist. Michael watched him and asked what he was doing. Tom showed him and explained what it was. "These are people who I want to go and talk to add to what you've already told me, and maybe get some different perspectives. I want to talk to as many successful entrepreneurs as I can." "Great idea. Give me the notebook a second." When Tom handed it over, Michael added a couple more names. "These last 2 I know well, so give them my name when you contact them." "Sounds like you have the beginning of a plan here." Tom's face was alight with enthusiasm and energy. "Definitely. I can't wait to get started, and I even have a name for it." "Let's hear it." Michael was energized just hearing the excitement in Tom's voice. "Okay, I want to call it Millionaire MBA. I wanted to teach the things that real-life entrepreneurs know, but are not taught at business school. It'll be a program that'll help people move into that millionaire mindset you talked about. I want it to be full of interviews with people like you, who are willing to pass on their wisdom. I think that would be an amazing business, and something I do feel passionate about. Passing on that knowledge and helping others is something I'm sure no one else has done like this, and I can't wait to get started." Michael knew that Tom really had got a great idea, because he could see the enthusiasm and energy with which he talked about it. "That's terrific. Now you have to keep that momentum going. Don't let all that passion and energy drift away. Anchor it with some immediate action to make it real for you. What about establishing a website?" "Yes, I'll certainly need to do that. And I need to register a name. That would make it real, wouldn't it?" Tom was practically out of his seat, he was so keen to get going. Slightly surprised by his own feelings, Tom looked at Michael. "Now I know what you meant about finding your passion. I just can't wait to get started. It's all I can think about." "Go for it, Tom," Michael encouraged him. Seeing the way Tom was so excited and focused on his goal, Michael couldn't have been more delighted if he'd come up with the idea himself. The noise of the engines throttling back alerted both of them to the fact that they were about to land. They exchanged business cards, and Tom knew that this was a great new beginning for him. Sitting next to Michael had changed his life, and he knew he would prove to be helpful well beyond the journey that they had shared together. As they were at the front of the plane, they disembarked first, and as the cabin door opened and they went through the airport to passport control, it was all Tom could do not to break into a run. As they walked through together, Michael stopped and shook Tom's hand. "I need to get an internal flight now, so I'll leave you here. I'm in the office Tuesday. Give me a call and I'll help you set up some more interviews with other entrepreneurs. I hope you'll have your business plan ready by then." Tom returned the handshake. "After all you've told me, I know better than to be less than 100% prepared. Thanks again, and I'll call you on Tuesday." Michael strolled off, and Tom headed towards the exit, in a much better mood than he could ever have imagined when he first sat in seat 1B. He was ready to start his new business, and he vowed to himself that 1 year from today he, too, would be a successful entrepreneur. Thinking of that seat 1B, and how lucky it had been for him, he had a sudden thought, and took out the notebook Michael had given him. He stepped aside from the press of people who were hurrying past him to get to the passport control area, and found a blank page. He wrote a large, bold note to himself, and put an asterisk in front of it, and grinned as he saw the words on the page. "Be the successful entrepreneur who always travels in seat 1A." Tucking the notebook back into his jacket pocket, he walked out looking for an internet terminal, so he could register his new business. Spotting the internet cafe, he grinned and walked towards his new life. Tom's notes. The magic ingredient. Entrepreneurs surround themselves with great people and build a fantastic team of people who complement their own skills. Never think you can do it all alone. You can't. Teams create synergy. 2 + 2 = 5 when you have a good team. The team must share your passion, belief, and desire. It's your job to inspire them. Great entrepreneurs have great mentors. Find yourself a mentor. Success comes from action. You must anchor your words and enthusiasm with action. Build on each step with more action. Do not procrastinate. Give something back for your own success. What you give out, you will receive back 1,000 times over. Always carry a notebook with you. You never know who you're going to meet or what ideas you will need to capture. Always travel in seat 1A. Millionaire MBA is a true story. Although the character of Tom is fictional, his idea for creating a mentoring course for entrepreneurs is very real. Before writing Millionaire Upgrade, the author, Richard Parkes Cordock, wanted to find out firsthand from real-life, self-made millionaires what made them so successful. Armed with the belief that this knowledge could be shared to the benefit of many, Richard interviewed 50 self-made millionaires and business experts, discovering the common traits and characteristics among them. The combination of his work is the highly acclaimed Millionaire MBA Business Mentoring Program. Over 8 weeks, real-life entrepreneurs share their proven strategies and mentor you to success in your own business. You can find out more about Millionaire MBA at www.millionairemba.com. Download your free podcast and entrepreneur interviews. Discover additional insights from the real-life entrepreneurs whose contributions made this book happen, and read the original story of Sir Richard Branson and the Upgraded Passenger. www.millionairemba.com/upgrade.
The key to making $1 million is to know how bloody easy it is. It's so easy, it's untrue. Anybody can do it. You can do it. You're an intelligent guy, and you can go there and you can start a children's day nursery and build up to a second one and a third one and so on. All you got to do is just take that first initial risk and go and do it. Anybody can do it. It's easy. It honestly is easy.
The key to making lots and lots of money is to have a business that creates small amounts of money, at the very least, and always planning how you are going to realise that.
I think there are a number of ways that you make $1 million. It totally comes down to your mindset, your ability, your self-confidence. An interesting friend once told me, you have to act like a queen to be treated like one. And what she referred to was that if you don't have the self-confidence to excel to the highest limit, then how can you expect to gain that? So, to make $1 million, you have to want it. You have to have focus. And then you have to be thinking about the next $1 million.
Well, first of all, you've got to be able to spot the opportunity, because I've known people who have worked as hard as me, who are smarter than me, who put in more hours than me, but they chose the wrong opportunity and therefore never made as much money. Therefore, you've got to be clever enough to spot the correct opportunity. Entrepreneurs see opportunity every day of the week, but I say, what's the correct one? Because it's a big opportunity cost. If you choose this, it means you can't do that. Therefore, is this the right one? And being able to work that out is key. And then once you spot the right opportunity, determination, focus, build a team. But I guess the key thing is the opportunity.
Anybody who wants to make £1 million can. All that's needed is the right opportunity and the millionaire mindset. Welcome to the Millionaire MBA, the definitive home study course which trains your mind to think with an entrepreneurial millionaire mindset. For 30 minutes a day, over 8 weeks, and with the help of 25 award-winning UK-based entrepreneurs and 4 experts in business and success, the Millionaire MBA will not only give you the confidence to succeed as an entrepreneur, but will also train your mind to find the right opportunity for you. Based on the concept of modeling excellence, this audio course was inspired by the principles of neuro-linguistic programming and Napoleon Hill's 1937 classic book, Think and Grow Rich. Building on these guiding influences, the Millionaire MBA provides the ability to fast-track your own route to success by following in the footsteps of masters. Our 25 award-winning entrepreneurs will share with you in their own words and language what they consider to be the path to entrepreneurial success. They'll share with you their thoughts on the 12 core elements of the millionaire mindset and will continue to guide you through an exciting and educational journey which will reprogram your mind for success. By modeling their words, actions and behavior and learning from their many years of combined entrepreneurial experience, you'll be able to accelerate the development of your own millionaire mindset.
I know lots of people who could make £1 million if they put the effort in, but they just don't want to. You know, and partly it's because they're afraid they won't make it. I don't know how many people don't make £1 million who try, but I know a lot of people who have made £1 million and they don't seem to have. It seems to be that they just wanted £1 million. That's why they've done it. £1 million isn't very much these days either. Just think of it like that. It's just like a stepping stone.
I do believe that anyone can do it. You have to keep on planting the seeds, believing in yourself, get out there, shout from the world, shout to everyone. You know, anyone that will listen to you, you just shout from the rooftops about your company and you tell them what you're doing. It doesn't matter, you know, be it the postman or director of a corporate company, you just tell everyone what you're doing and you just keep planting the seeds and you'll get there.
I always say optimists rule the world, and it's so true. The difference between something happening and it not happening is the belief that it will happen. And I've seen time and time again people who could have made something happen, but they didn't believe it, they didn't see it in their mind's eye, and so as a result, self-fulfilling prophecy, it doesn't happen. Universally across all of successful entrepreneurs and even successful business people that have not founded their own ventures, it's a confidence plus optimism plus persistence. But if I had to choose between the three, I would say optimism, then confidence and persistence.
To me, the most important single attribute is persistence. I think it's the unwillingness to give up and the ability to continue against the odds that distinguishes the winners from the others.
Well, just don't give up, because there's always got to be an option. There's always got to be a get out somewhere. You know, you've got to be realistic, but you can't give up.
Millionaire mindset is not taking no for an answer and determined that they're right, and that's it. Because I have to sort of explain this to people in large companies when I'm doing entrepreneurship for banks and people, which is, it's not the generation of ideas, because ideas come from everywhere. It's the determination that you're going to solve that problem, almost to the point of insanity in some people's cases. Then it's the ability to attract a team around you who can execute. Then it's the last thing, which is being lucky. And every entrepreneur you speak to will say, I was lucky, and they believe it. Whether they really believe it, whether they think they're going to be lucky all the time is a different thing. But I was lucky back in 83, 84, I was in the right place at the right time. And good entrepreneurs make their own luck. And, you know, the glass is always half full. And the reality is that they're as lucky or unlucky as anybody else, but they forget the bad luck and they just move on. They just explain it away and they just get on to the next thing. They're going to be lucky tomorrow. They always are. They're going to live forever and that thing. But there was something in the Sunday newspapers this weekend about it becomes self-fulfilling. If you believe it, then it'll happen. And you've got to have that mindset.
Self-belief. Unquestionably self-belief. The ability that no matter what problems you put in front of me, I will overcome them. I will get where I want to go. I am aiming in that direction. I know exactly where I'm going. I may not know exactly how I'm going to get there, because you never know what's around the corner or what obstacles will be put in the way. But undoubtedly, I will get there. I will succeed.
The millionaire mindset is a different way of thinking to the employee or self-employed mindset. It's beyond confidence. It's having inner belief in yourself and having zero doubt in your mind that you will achieve success as an entrepreneur. It transcends understanding. In a word, it can be called inner standing. The Millionaire MBA creates your inner standing of the millionaire mindset. We are all born potential millionaires. We have amazing untapped resources within us just waiting to be released. Most of us never come close to harnessing this potential or testing our limits. The Millionaire MBA is designed to awaken this latent force already within you, directing this intrinsic energy source into your future entrepreneurial success.
If you're not going to believe in it 100%, you can't persuade other people to believe in it.
The original money put into the company was £30,000, and when it was sold, even though the share price was way down from what it had been, it was for £143 million. So that although it's undoubtedly the case that I did a lot of things wrong and you could have done much better, even so it has been a success.
Determination and confidence, they're almost linked, right? Because if you lose your confidence, you can be as determined as you like, it ain't going to happen. You've got to be confident about your abilities moving forward and dragging in all of the elements you need to sort of achieve your goal. So whether it's confidence or determination, I tend to use them both all the time. Absolutely determined to do something, you know, and once I enter a field, you know, I am very confident that we're going to give this the best shot possible, and I've always linked it to lots of other elements, of course, and but those two.
I think probably the most important thing is a complete self-belief. You know, I've always, you know, since I started the business, I have always felt that it will work.
What you've got to have, and what I had, is complete and utter faith in your idea. And that faith comes across as confidence. And that confidence generates trust from other people and belief from other people because you believe in your idea.
I vividly remember being in the office on Christmas Eve, working on the first year, and we took a call from one of our biggest exhibitors who said, "I'm really sorry to tell you, he said, there's never a good time, but we're actually not going to do your event." And that was a huge knock on Christmas Eve, and you think, you know, thanks pal, you know. But you kind of think, right, as I said earlier, you know, you dust yourself down, you pick yourself up and say, I'm not going to lose this, I'm going to fight. And funny enough, we did actually persuade them to come back in.
Our business is entirely about persuasion, and that's kind of my main skill. I persuade people that event ideas are good when they're just ideas. I persuade people that once we've got these ideas mapped out, that they should give us money to make them come true. I persuade staff to work on them, and persuade people to dream about wouldn't it be good if.
I think the millionaire mindset is a positive drive. It's a total belief that you're going to make something happen. I'm going to do that, and that's it, and nothing else gets in the way.
There's very little entrepreneurial spirit drummed into schools, to children in schools, and they do get conditioned into this whole lifestyle of what career are you going to do, what A-levels will you take, how will your degree help you in the job you get, and then bang, 60 years later you're retired, or you know, and your life is gone. Whereas there's no reason why you can't just make, again, that crucial flip, that crucial step, just to try it on your own. And again, I think anyone can do that. They just need that tiny push to do it. And this could be it.
The Millionaire MBA is an 8-week home study audio course built around interviews with 25 award-winning UK-based entrepreneurs. For 30 minutes a day, over 8 weeks, you'll retrain your mind to think differently for entrepreneurial success. Included in the 25 masters who'll guide you through 2 months of learning are the entrepreneurs behind successful companies such as Pizza Express, IG Index, Yo Sushi, The White Company, Cobra Beer, Carpetright, and many more. The course includes an entrepreneur who started selling shoes from the back of his car and went on to sell his business 18 years later for £280 million. It includes an entrepreneur who started with negative equity when he sold his house in the early 1990s, but after reading Think and Grow Rich, went on to co-create a business which was later sold for £42 million. He then built his next business from scratch, and in 14 months sold it for £35 million, all before he was 35 years old. The course includes the entrepreneur behind IDOS, one of the world's fastest growing companies in the 1990s. You'll hear from the inventor of the Anyway Up Cup and understand her mindset of success and excellence. You'll hear from the entrepreneur who started her recruitment company with a credit card and a £10,000 overdraft. She has now built that company into a multi-million-pound business. You'll hear from the entrepreneur who started his career by buying an ice cream van for £450, expecting to fix it up for a profit, but instead went on to build his own fleet of ice cream vans. After selling that company, he went on to build a chain of nursing homes, then a chain of children's daycare nurseries, and more recently, a chain of fitness clubs. You'll find him and many of the other entrepreneurs featured in the Millionaire MBA in the Sunday Times Rich List. The one thing you'll find in common with all 25 entrepreneurs is that they each have the millionaire mindset. The Millionaire MBA provides a unique opportunity to learn from these masters, who over the course of 8 weeks will share the lessons they've learned and help direct you towards your own entrepreneurial success. The course is delivered on 25 audio CDs and is designed to be listened to for 30 minutes a day wherever you have access to a CD player. Whether it's on the way to work or relaxing at home, this inspirational, educational and entertaining course is the most effective way for you to develop your own millionaire mindset. To read more about the award-winning entrepreneurs and experts who have contributed to the Millionaire MBA and for a full understanding of the course structure, please visit www.millionairemba.com.
The most important element, I think, is to be passionate, is to be absolutely committed and passionate to what you're going to do. And I think if you haven't got that, you haven't got a hope in hell.
One of the most important things is probably passion. Entrepreneurs are absolutely obsessed and in love with what they're doing. And I think you need that if you're setting up a new business, because it's extremely difficult to do. And if you're not totally in love with the idea, it's very difficult to convince other people, such as suppliers or bank managers or employees.
I think that passion, or enthusiasm, or whatever you call it, is probably the one common denominator of everything. Because unless you are, and I'm not saying that I'm passionate and enthusiastic the whole time. Sometimes I go, oh, bloody hell, what am I doing this for? I get the same as everybody. Not very often, I must admit. But generally, I'm enthusiastic about it. And I think that the people that I meet who are in business, that is a very common denominator about them. Because unless you are, what you're doing it for, you'll never get you through the hard times.
I've just gone into this because I believed I could do it. And everybody was kind of laughing at me, thinking, my God, you're mad. Because I had really no education. It's like, now looking back, you should never knock education. Because the more, things that I've learned at school, obviously that would have helped me today.
I've got a saying, there's no such word as can't. Because all you do is you take the T off it. Which means you can do it. You can do anything. Anything you try, you can do.
The Millionaire MBA is designed for anybody who wants to achieve success as an entrepreneur. Whether or not you already have an idea for a business doesn't matter. What matters is that your mind is tuned to entrepreneurial success. Those who develop their minds will not only be more receptive to new business ideas as they're identified, but will also be more responsive when opportunities come along. Those who develop the millionaire mindset will have the inner confidence that they can turn opportunity into business success. The Millionaire MBA is also for those who choose to stay in full-time employment. In today's ever-changing world, with reduced job security and increased volatility in the employment market, it's critical that you view yourself as the entrepreneur of your own company. That company is Me Unlimited. In fact, we're all entrepreneurs of our own lives, and therefore to achieve the greatest level of success in life, it's essential to develop a mindset of excellence, the millionaire mindset. As you heard at the start of this promotional CD, anybody who wishes to can indeed develop a £1 million business. There's no doubt that each and every one of us has that inborn potential. The only difference between those who actually achieve this level of success and those who don't is one thing. That is the way they think. For more information about the Millionaire MBA and thinking differently with the Millionaire Mindset, please visit us online at www.millionairemba.com.
Biggest motivation was if I didn't do it, I'd always regret it. And it was a number of personal circumstances, including someone close to me getting ill, that made me actually more aware of my own mortality. That made me think, oh, bugger it, I'll go for it. And it wasn't actually through some convincing business plan. It wasn't a clever piece of capitalism that I said, if I do this, I'll get X. It was actually much more, I need to do this, otherwise I'll always regret it.
Opportunities and ideas, I think, come from yourself as an entrepreneur. I think very much you just look for your own environment. All the entrepreneurs I speak to were just providing something they needed themselves, really, just a hole in the market they felt was there. Part of my fun is having an original idea and delivering it and being seen to have done this, thought of it and done it first, and everyone to smack their heads and go, why didn't I think of it? It's so stupidly simple. And that's when you know you've got a real cracker. When people say, well, why hasn't someone done it before? It's so obvious. That's when you know you've got it.
It's incredible, and the hours and commitment that you'll put into it, and you just don't even think about it, till 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, all night if necessary,
I think at the end of the day, it's about willingness to take risk. If you don't take chances, you don't get anywhere, you don't go anywhere. You have to make intellectual decisions, you have to look at commercial viability and decide what you're going to do. But at the end of the day, looking at all the logical stuff doesn't take you anywhere. It's having that sort of the balls to do it, really.
The single most important reason I can think of is just that we've actually started. We've made that crucial leap.
I think the secret of success is just really it's actually doing it. There's an awful lot of people who might stand in the pub talking about how to be successful or how to start a business, or sit at home watching television and thinking about it, but they don't actually do it. If you're going to be successful, you've got to start a business, and the way you do that is you stop going to the pub and you stop watching television. It's as simple as that. The most important thing in the world for all of us is time, and if we waste that time doing nothing, lying on the couch watching television, then we won't be successful.
For more information about the Millionaire MBA and thinking differently with the Millionaire Mindset, please visit us online at www.millionairemba.com.